everyone has made a corporation. Our corporation is called this. The White Turkey and Big Jim, who formed this corporation to protect our treaty rights, culture, heritage, everything who we are. Okay, so you have a people like the Katua people, original people. They made this corporation here. Everyone has made a corporation. Our corporation is called this. Absentee Shawnee Tribe of Oklahoma. Here's our code of laws, table of contents. Right here, right off the bat, the treaty. It has these people in it. All these people of the faith, okay? You got to read these treaties. These are active primary law, just as the Americans' Constitution. It's a real deal, Holyfield, people. Here's in consideration of the peace now established for the cessions of land traded over there to over here. It's right here in the treaty. Now, here, if any citizens of the United States or any other white person or persons, which is a persona, which is a corporation, shall presume to settle upon the lands now relinquished by the United States, such citizens or other persons shall be out of the protections of the United States. What does that mean? Oh, I'm glad you asked that. That means as a federal tribal prosecutor from a holy land and a ceremonial law can use ceremonial law on these people, personas, citizens. Remember, Stitt's a citizen of Cherokee Nation. He's a citizen by my treaty. He's over here in Indian country, Oklahoma, the land of the red man, or home of the red man, however you want to word it. It's all federal. He's trying to make it a sovereign state. As long as I'm out here on the Treaty of Greenville, there is no terra nullius, which means the people are extinct or the land is vacant. The people are still here. It's just now one of us has a law degree to protect you, your children, and your children's resources, the skies they spray, all for the record. I always say, for the record, we don't consent to the sparrow saw attack in Indian country. So it's going to be for the record that these youth, young people, children not yet here yet can get damages and relief. Maybe get a full body Kim suit, because maybe you start walking like that now. I don't know. But you read it right here for yourself. Screenshot that. Or Google the Treaty of Greenville. Or your own treaty, wherever you're at. The law still exists. It is a primary law of the land. Primary law of the land. Let's keep on going. It doesn't just stop there. Hang on. The said tribes of Indians, parties to this treaty, shall be at liberty to hunt within the territory and lands which they have now ceded to the United States. That means I can go to Ohio to sacred sites and go hunting at will. Okay? Don't go getting those freak. I don't ever get that stuff. I once played it, but I got tired of paying. I said, man, I got a treaty, and I started exercising my rights on that. Trade shall be open with the said Indian tribes, and they do hereby respectfully engage and afford protection to such persons, their property, and the duly licensed to reside among them for the purpose of trade. That's what the Social Security card's for. Remember, they told the Shawnee, here's the Social Security card. It's not you. It has letters and numbers you're authorized to use to engage with us. See, it's right here. It says it right there. But if you don't know your treaty, you have no law, and they want you to have no law. Now here, Article 9. Lest the firm peace and friendship now established should be interrupted by the misconduct of individuals, Thomas Couch, all these magistrates, the Geisy, the Jews, all of them, misconduct of individuals, United States, and the said Indian tribes agree that for the injuries done by the individuals on either side, no private revenge or retaliation. Okay, so that's why you use ceremonial law, Creator's law, for the protection of his children. But instead, therefore, complaint shall be made by the party injured to the other by the said Indian tribes or any of them to the President of the United States or the superintendent, that is Deb Holland, by him appointed, and by the superintendent or other person appointed by the President to the principal chiefs of the said Indian tribes or the tribe to be pursued as shall be necessary to preserve the said peace and friendship unbroken until the legislature or great council of the United States shall make the equitable provisions. That means money in the case. So ICWA is going to have money coming to them. ICWA won't, because it's old stuff. That's why they made ICWA, because ICWA is a failure. They don't want to bring up ICWA because it's going to pull out all the fraud that ICWA is. And so anyway, there's going to be here at the General Officer Commanding of the Troops, United States, at the treaty post. So it says, should any Indian tribes meditate a war against the United States or either of them, and the same shall come to the knowledge of the before mentioned tribes or either of them, the do hereby engage and give immediate notice therefore of the General Officer Commanding the Troops of the United States at the nearest post. Either of them attempt to pass through their country, they will endeavor to prevent the same. It's all about the sovereignty that you have to keep the peace, to keep the friendship between them may be uninterrupted. So what they're saying here is that you got to inform of the warfare that's going on. But if you know the doctrines of discovery, you know that they try to convert you to Christianity. And if you don't, it is a just war. And here's all the people. Here's all the people. Lots of people. Let's see if I can get it up closer for you. Anthony Wayne was there. He's in history. Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Nobody liked Anthony Wayne. So you see, these names are tied to the Treaty of Greenville, which is a primary law of the land. It also says to exchange prisoners, and they haven't done it. And some of these names are on my tract of land here at the Dawes land, Dawes Treaty land, Treaty of Greenville. So now you know that there's people who have formed this corporation. And here's the people. We, the people of the Big Jim and White Turkey bands of the Shawnee Nation, which is the Kispokatas Shawnees of American Indians, initially organized pursuant to a constitution and bylaws ratified this date. On this date right here, December 5th, 1938, we formed this corporation as the absentee Shawnee Tribe of Indians of Oklahoma in order to protect our just claims and rights of treaties. Screenshot that, because you probably have a similar one too, because it's a template. All templates are similar to get federally recognized. But you better have the land like I do. You better have a buffalo logo. You can't be faking this stuff. You got to be the real sovereign man of a holy place like me, which Fish Pond is, Greenleaf. I can't say the old ground or new ground of the man's because I don't go there. I only go where the spirit is. And that spirit's left down here a long time ago. A long time ago. And I remember the last day when that was here. So anyway, these are supposed to protect us. The treaties, the treaty rights, the culture, the religion, everything. Your babies from being injected, from getting whatever. This all protects your faith. Okay, so now that you see that there's a preamble here, now we're going to go to the court section. Okay, this is our court. The absentee Shawnee Tribe of Oklahoma, this is our court. This ain't no white man's court. Ain't no black man's court, no yellow man's court. It's our court. The White Turkey and Big Jim, who formed this corporation to protect our treaty rights, culture, heritage, everything who we are. So let's go through these tabs here. So you're going to have all this stuff here. Remember, this is a template that all were given to. So let's go to the law to be applied. Y'all can screenshot this too. See if I can get some of the shadows out of that. All right, screenshot that, because I'm sure your corporation has the same thing to apply your ceremonial law, traditional tribal customs, your law. The court shall apply traditional tribal customs.
Share decision.
The court, your own court, okay? If you can't grasp this, maybe you deserve to be deceived. Remember, it's your right to be deceived. The truth shall set you free. This is my truth that I share with you guys. The court shall have general jurisdiction over the civil actions arising under the Constitution. This is money jurisdiction. Okay, but you got to remember the treaty. Remember what the treaty said about the Americans who come into the Indian country? Yep. But now here's the qualifications right here. I hope you guys can see it through the shades and all that. So you have to let me know if you can. So, minimum qualifications. Judge shall be either an enrolled member of the tribe. Now, who uses those words? How do you become an enrolled member of the tribe when you're created the tribe? Again, somebody else filled this out. It was Browning Pipestem. Again, it's just a form that all people got, and it's tweaked out a little bit. But this should have been the White Turkey and Big Jim of the tribe. Okay, that's what it should read. Or it says you can be the parent, or you can be the child, or you can be the spouse of a White Turkey or Big Jim. Remember, a sovereign can interpret this ambiguity in their favor. That's what I'm sharing with you. This as a sovereign for me to share with you what this really means. Because this is my corporation, not anyone else's. Remember, a sovereign can interpret this ambiguity in their favor. That's what I'm sharing with you. This as a sovereign for me to share with you what this really means. Because this is my corporation, not anyone else's. Mine. I'm a shareholder that's actually exercising the shareholder rights. But I have our code of laws too that I try to share with everyone, but they just don't pick it up. So the White Turkey or Big Jim can be a qualification to be a judge because you know the law, the ceremonial law. Or you can be actually domiciled within the territorial jurisdiction of the tribe, which is the Treaty of Greenville from Miami all the way down to Georgia, to Tennessee, to Kentucky, all over the place. Shawnees are everywhere. And then you can also be an attorney or a lay advocate who has regularly practiced before the court as a member of the bar. Now here's where they slip it in here. Here comes the black robe sneaking in to void your law. They don't have an oath with you. They're not even from your grounds. They're not even a parent. They're not a child. They're none of these. This is how they sneak into the court. That's how they get their millions. Fraud, fraud, fraud. Or, here's another one. An Indian graduate of an American Bar Associated approved law school. What do you think the University of Oklahoma School of Law attended in 2018 to be the Attorney General for our people in 2018?
There you go.
They hired Gary Pitchland, who only taught gaming at OU Law.
And you could be
fraud again.
Recognized
federal tribal preference over my corporation and my courts. The tax collector, John Raymond, hired Gary Pitchland to steal our children, abduct our children, violate our treaties, all of these things, all of that. So they're That's just the minimum qualifications. I've been to paralegal school at Rose State. Been to OU Law School. I didn't even know this existed. This didn't come into my hands till about a year ago. I haven't returned it back because I'm keeping it for the people. Now let's go on to the next kicker here.
The scholarship.
Oath of office. You screenshot that too.
And you get in position.
Oath of office. Before assuming office, before a judge, special judge, magistrate, chief of police, anybody, the tax collector, governor, lieutenant governor, all these frauds up there have an oath. Before assuming office, each judge, special judge, and magistrate shall take an oath to support and protect the Constitution of the tribe. And the tribe is the White Turkey and Big Jim, not the corporation, Absentee Shawnee Tribe of Oklahoma. That's a corporation formed in 1938, December 5th. The tribe is the White Turkey, Big Jim of the Treaty of Greenville that has land. So you see, they have this right here, an oath to support and protect the Constitution of the tribe. So let's go back to the Constitution. So screenshot this too. Here it is, the preamble of the Constitution. And what does it say? It was formed, the corporation was formed on this time and date.
First 3 words.
To protect our just claims and rights of treaties. Not one of these freaking frauds in our corporation has done so. Ever. So, when it says to apply the ceremonial law, there's no prisons in any country. And there's a law for that. You commit crimes against the children. There's even laws that in prison you do crimes against children.
I hear a lot of people talking about.
I only fend for the children. Now, y'all don't know me very well, but those who do, you don't know me at all. Because I've been battling for my children all my life. I have an adopted child out there who during Desert Storm, I'm the first case that should be in the Supreme Court versus the Cherokee O baby. His is after Desert Storm. Oklahoma Child Welfare Act of 1982 keeps the children in the culture, so my adopted baby's mama should have called my mom, should have called the tribe, should have called somebody, because we all know each other down here. And at the grounds, they could have called Greenleaf, could have called Fish Pond, could have called Gar Creek, Duck Creek. Anybody of my faith, this baby could have been in that home. OICWA protects the children in the culture of the people. It never goes out to white man, black man, or yellow man. The baby stays in the culture. If you can't find a Shawnee, then you better find a Creek. Creeks are the same of our faith, of our bundle belief. They're our cousins. We have history, same faith. They could have gone to my dad's side, my stepdad, could have gone to Grandma Linda, say, here's Michael's baby. Oh, good. That's our baby. Gonna learn what shell's on. Gonna shake hands. Gonna learn our ways. Or they could have gone to the Kickapoo, the Kickapaw over here. They could have gone to my Grandma Rachel Tecumseh, who's granddaughter of Tecumseh. Again, y'all just don't know who y'all's talking to. I'm a royalty bloodline and a lineage. You can't get away from this because it's how baby found me. My baby found some people that helped adopted children through DNA, and baby found me all through the lineage of the bloodline of the Kaspokota Shawnees. She found me. Again, no one has protected us till now. So here I am sharing the truth. That's all I can do on these platforms is the truth. Again, OICWA should have protected my firstborn, and it didn't. My secondborn down in the BIA, down at Anadarko, who has our treaties there, violated my son's treaties and OICWA and our law. For my little one here, my daughter, who's 18 now, haven't seen her in 5 years because of this imposter court, but now I know the truth. Don't we be going back to them imposter courts? You got to know your truth, but you better have the land to stand the ground too, because I'm the law out here. As you just saw by the treaty, if any American comes out here in Indian country, they're out of the protections of the United States. Because here's the law of creation out here. All living things out here. God of the living is out here. He's not in America, the Babylon. So that's pretty quick in a nutshell, as they say in the books, in a nutshell about Indian law, because I took that class too at East Central University. That's how I know the Chickasaws down there, the real ones. Super Saw, Monty Stick, gives them a class. I know a lot of real ones, but they've been assimilated because it's an effort against us. Remember, the Doctrines of Discovery says convert to Christianity, and if you don't, it's a just war. They've always been at war with us, people of the faith. So I'm ready to look at some of y'all's stuff. Hope you have beautiful things to say, because if not, and somebody else on here regulate that. All right, so that's a little bit about me, but I've had ceremonial family all my life. They always told us to go learn and bring it back. Well, now that they're all gone, my parents are gone, my grandma's gone, my great-grandma's gone. Well, that generation is my generation, the Arbors now. So hopefully they were listening to the elders to go learn and bring it back. Well, now bring it back, my elders are gone. Leon Bell's gone. You try to get all the Nikos together to share about this law degree I have for the people. I don't know if it's ego. I don't know what it is. I don't know. Maybe it's just my looks they don't like. I don't know. But it's not me that they're not liking. They're not liking what's in my heart. My heart is Creator's law innately written on here. I know things without knowing innately. I just don't know how I know it unless Creator put it there. But these are testimony of my faith and belief. They're gifted to me. They come to me. I don't go buy these things or nothing. They slowly come back.
So yeah, we're gonna do what we can. Share this real information. People can start getting outside of their ego and their emotion. Listen to the things that's being said. It's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of craziness being taught about what it is to be in a tribe, $5 Indians, and just the whole tribal situation. And you could tell people don't know what they're talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm trying to show you people who know what they're talking about and hear what they say. Now, you'll hear people tell you about the $5 Indians and people stole something from you and they stole this and this and that, right? But think about the history you know, just in general. Think about general history, right? How politicians are corrupt, how they always stealing from the people, right? So when you're looking at a lot of these federally recognized tribes, you're looking at politics. That's simple. United States politics, right? So yeah, you can say these corporations were created, and you can find the dates on when these corporations were created, right? But the corporations were created at a period in time to represent the actual tribal nations who had entered into treaty. All right. So long before the corporations are formed, there were treaties signed by actual nations. Then eventually, as time went on, and they began to incorporate these nations, that's when the modern nations that you know of, that you can look at and say, these are the 5 civilized, those are the first 5. That's when those corporations began to be created, right? You can talk, like, you can really literally look it up and see when tribes were incorporated. That doesn't mean they didn't exist before then. So when they be like, the government made these tribes up, the government incorporated tribes. That's different than saying they made them up. The government made a corporation to represent those people. And that's where all the corruption comes from. And those people are taking advantage of the actual traditional people. We, the people, right? That's who creates the government, and the government is supposed to carry out the will of we, the people, right? Well, the government, if you just watch the video and you see what he was saying, he was showing that there's multiple ways to attach yourself to the government or to the corporation. Ways that are beyond just being born into it or being adopted into it, right? And so throughout time, that's how a lot of these people have become not only tribal members, but the people are brought into the tribes to help run the business side. So it's almost like when you hiring somebody, you know what I mean? Like it ain't always about ethics. You feel me? Right? But if you bringing somebody into your family, it's all about ethics. So you got two sides of every nation. You got the family side, the traditional side. It's all about ethics and tradition. And you got the business side. That's about the bottom line. It's the dollar. And this business side is supposed to take care of this side. That's how it's all set up. But the business side has been infiltrated, just like every other business is infiltrated, and it gets corrupt, and the leadership is corrupt, and it doesn't take care of this side. So you hear about all the money, but then when you look at some places, some reservations, some, you know what I mean, some communities, right, inner cities, you see all this, ain't no money, but we know it's all types of money everywhere. You know what I mean? It's the same shit going on with people of color, whether they're on reservations or they in the cities or the suburbs. You know what I mean? That's the real issue. So thinking you somehow gonna declare that you were Indian, and all of a sudden somebody gonna recognize you and cut you a check. That's not even a reality. Like, it's delusional thinking. It's incredibly delusional thinking. Yeah, I don't know where this holy grail is that people think they're gonna stumble upon, find 1,000,000 indigenous bones that prove there was a group of people here that predate everybody and all this crazy shit. I don't know what fucking cave you're gonna pull that shit up out of. You know what I mean? But that's pretty much what you're gonna need. I don't know, maybe you want to start in Kentucky Mammoth Caves. You gotta know about the Kentucky Mammoth Caves. Yeah, go check those out. Maybe you'll find some burial grounds that could help your cause. But for those who really trying to understand this shit, you gotta understand families. Think about how your family is and how you got family members that live in all different towns. Are you loyal to your family, or are you loyal solely to the town you live in? Something happened. They said it was some catastrophic shit. You know what I mean? You gonna be calling motherfuckers in your town, or you gonna be calling motherfuckers in your family that live in different towns? You know what I'm saying? When shit hit the fan, who you gonna want to align with? So when you think of politics, from the outside in, you might think of neighborhoods or tribes, but from the inside out, it's clans or families, right? So a lot of what I see going on with people, and that's why they don't understand, that's why they don't get that. They be like Cherokee, and they just speak about the Cherokee as if they're one monolithic people. That's because they don't understand the clan system, and they don't understand just any tribe, Creek, any tribe. Lenape, any tribe, you know what I mean? Any tribe. Unless you understand the clan system, you ain't gonna understand the politics. And you trying to assess things that went on, and you're looking from the outside in, you ain't gonna get it. You know, you ain't gonna get it. You don't know the relationship that the government has with different tribes historically. You ain't gonna get it. But there's some people who have been trying to explain this stuff for decades. So I try to share their information. It's information I would have shared a long time ago, but people was really stuck on phenotype. So I'm like, they ain't gonna be ready to hear none of these things. I feel like
Okay,
people
so
are,
Patrick emailed you the questions beforehand, and I'm
you
going
know,
to
ready
go in a
in,
linear order out of
you know.
Patrick advised me on which questions to ask. So it'll make more sense to the audience that we're going to be marketing this to. So my first question.
There's a man called Vine Deloria. He's a Lakota.
To you, Mr.
He
Delory,
has a lot of good
is
information.
before modern tribal governments, before the IRA, how.
We are rolling.
Okay, so Patrick emailed you the questions beforehand, and I'm going to go in a linear order out of Patrick advised me on which questions to ask. So it'll make more sense to the audience that we're going to be marketing this to. So my first question to you, Mr. Deloria, is before modern tribal governments, before the IRA, how did American Indians determine membership?
Well, it's a very complex thing. If you went far back to the beginning of the 19th century, you find clear patterns of adoption, intermarriage, and casual relationships, I guess you'd say, that raise all kinds of questions about who is a member of the tribe. And at that point, the government quite often in treaties will say that anyone half blood or below should take the allotment of land and not be tribal members. And then that's finally opposed by some of the tribes because the chiefs now have grandchildren who are mixed blood, and they want them to be part of the tribe so they can get annuities. And so from that starting point, then you move forward, and there's two ways of keeping track of tribal membership. So people that the tribe accepts as members, who are usually relatives of people who continue to live in a tribal way. The other is in making out annuity rolls. You can the government will recognize certain classes of people as Indians, and then they will arbitrarily say that a certain blood percentage in a tribe makes you a non-Indian and not an Indian. So going up in the 1890s to about 1920, when you're doing allotments, people want to trace back to someone that's either on the annuity roll or was recognized for allotments. And so it's a real mess by the time you get to 1900, that there are all kinds of criteria being used, but often the criteria depends on the treaty or agreement that the tribe has with the government. So you come to IRA, and those IRA rolls are the Bureau and the tribe's best effort to determine what membership is so people can vote on constitutions. Sometimes they have merit on them, sometimes they don't. And so out of that, which is the big issue, is always who's eligible to vote in tribal elections. who's eligible to vote for the Constitution and bylaws, and who's eligible to run for office in the tribe. And so depending on the tribe, you have different criteria. But nowhere is there a self-identity thing in any of this. That everyone on any of those rolls, undoubtedly, till about 1930, had two two or three of the four grandparents were Indian, without any question at all.
So how does adoption and intermarriage factor into identity then and now?
There was a time you could be a total non-Indian and be adopted into a tribe and be a tribal member. Kansas Indians case went to the Supreme Court. Some of those tribes that were parties to that suit have been selling tribal memberships. So you say, wait a minute, what's going on here? I've run across cases where non-Indians were friendly local neighbors of Indians, and they were put on the rolls by a vote of the tribe. And they thereafter then they weren't Indians, but they were basically citizens of that tribe. And you had all kinds of problems when the five civilized tribes broke up, because a lot of these people were citizens of the five tribes, but not Indian blood. And so at points you had government intervention, and sometimes you didn't have government intervention. So now you get to IRA, and there are roles where one twin is 3/4 and another twin is half. Same mother, same hospital, same day, and this is the Bureau's. This is the Bureau's statement. And I run across a lot of people into genealogy, and a lot of times the Bureau insists on its own version of the genealogy where it's obviously inaccurate. But then it would be a hassle with the tribal council to get this overturned, so people don't want to do it, or they do want to do it. Out in California, you have tribes trying to disenroll people so they'll get more money, the incumbents. It's just a bowl of spaghetti is what it is.
So with adoption and intermarriage factoring into identity, do certain elements of traditional forms exist in membership today in any
Certainly.
tribes?
There's certain elements of
Do certain elements of traditional forms of identity, of how Indian tribes identified before the IRA, do they exist today?
Yeah, there are a lot of tribes that have variants of IRA constitutions, and they're much more traditional. But the key to the Indian identity is, can you identify yourself with a specific Indian community? And that's always been the criteria. You can go to Hopeville if you're a Hopi,
Giving you the jewel right here.
remember his family, then that's authentication. This works for almost all the tribes. During the real activist days, there were all these people running around shouting, "If you're an Indian, if you think you are." And most of the people shouting were government undercover agents who were on these marches and things. So, when you see the self-identification brought in,
It's a government
it's
movement.
only, looking at
Push the
history,
idea
it's only
that
good as long as no one
you're
challenges.
Indian if you think you are.
The minute that's
Sounds like
challenged,
something
then
is
you really
going
have
on
to
right
come
now.
with some kind of proof that you had an Indian ancestor, and that's not always easy.
Let me bring that back.
Marches and things. So, when you you see this self-identification brought in, that's only, looking at history, that's only good as long as no one challenges it. The minute that's challenged, then you really have to come up with some kind of proof that you had an Indian ancestor, and that's not always easy.
Yep, that's the problem. It's not easy
So with that in mind,
for people to
going to
move in
Pat's
the
question,
goalposts,
how did American
creating
Indian
whole new
identity
groups
manifest
that are
into the current
somehow
criteria of
different
today? And where did the idea of
nations that
blood
lived here
quantum
that
get
there's
introduced
no
into the
lasting
equation
proof other
historically?
than
What idea of
people
what?
stole
Where
it.
did the idea of blood quantum get introduced into this equation historically? Where does that stem from?
Okay, historically, it goes to a treaty in the Chicago area where the government was going to eliminate all the half-bloods and quarter-bloods.
Giving it all
The
up.
chiefs demanded that Indians
Who
of
you think
quarter
they were
blood
mixing?
be recognized as tribal members
Negroes.
because they were the grandchildren of these chiefs. And so the blood quantum doesn't emerge again for a long time until the Waldron case,
In Chicago.
which is about, well, mid-1880s. I don't know
I'm
exactly.
going north.
This was a lady on the Cheyenne River who had married a white man and moved away. And they started to issue allotments up there. And she felt she was still a tribal member. And the U.S. at that point was like Canada. If a woman married out of the tribe to a white husband, then she was no longer an Indian. And a white woman marrying an Indian man would come in and they would regard her as a tribal member. Canada had that in law for a long time. It doesn't emerge again till there's an obscure education statute in the 19 teens. I don't know whether it's 14, 15, 16, where the Catholic Church boarding schools are overflowing with children to be educated. And so they ask for a quarter blood quantum, that you can't go below quarter blood in terms of providing services. And so then, when you get to IRA, people say, well, a quarter is, if you got a quarter, then you had at least two Indian grandparents. And so then you face the problem that a lot of tribes have if there's so many people below a quarter. So some tribes have changed that. Said, okay, if you're an eighth or if you can prove you're a descendant to an allotment or an annuity roll, then you're eligible for tribal membership. So once you add that criteria, then the quarter blood doesn't seem important because you got people at 1/8. And then you get these tribes up in the little corner of eastern Oklahoma who've been there since 1830s or 40s, who don't have any quarter bloods at all, and yet they have a tribal government, they have a reservation, and they can trace their families back to these chiefs, but there's no one at quarter blood.
That's
So
all
you
the
said
people you call fine.
today tribes are changing the blood quantum criteria. Where does that right stem from for the tribes
Oh, that's
to
an
change?
inherent right of the tribe to determine its own membership.
Is that stated within the IRA or is it?
No, that's generally accepted. There's a solicitor's opinion in the fall of 34 that lists all the inherent powers of the tribe. And based on all those inherent powers, people simply say that a tribe has a right to determine its own membership.
So the United Kituwa Band can inherently change the blood quantum from a quarter to however low they want to go without seeking any approval through the Bureau.
Well, you're going to get a fight with the Bureau because if you go down to 1/8, that doubles the clientele for public health service and for education funds and roads. So the Bureau's going to fight for the 1/4. And there's been controversy in Oklahoma for a long time about public health service comes to provide services for people of major Indian blood quantum, and the clinics are flooded with people 1/16, 1/8, 1/32. And so the Indians, who are really traditional and represent the most blood quantum, are standing at the end of the line, so they don't like that.
So where does Santa Clara Pueblo v. Martinez, how does that factor into
Well,
inherent
that
rights?
upholds the right of the Pueblo to determine its own membership.
Just the Pueblo, or does that affect all Indian tribes?
Well, as a
recognized?
principle, it's supposed to affect all Indian tribes.
Does it?
But then there's a catch. Suppose a corrupt group gets in the tribal government and starts de-enrolling the real Indians, which is happening in California. There's been a state case on that. Now, who does the government owe the trust to? To the tribal government, which is now occupied by a group of bandits, or to the Indians who can trace back to even relatives who were tribal chairman or tribal councilman 2 generations ago? And you see, it becomes a very tricky thing. There are no general principles involved here.
So what are the current criteria of tribal membership today?
Well, you'd have to go to each tribe and find out what they're going to do.
So each
Well, what
tribe
they've done.
still today determines its own membership.
Yeah.
Patrick, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. Or...
Well, some tribes, and I won't mention them, were very clever at IRA. When they made up their rules, they listed everybody as a full blood. Because they figure if the Bureau was so intent on getting blood quantum that they better start with a high blood quantum because they're going to have intermarriage.
Do you think when tribes were adopting this new form of government, were they looking out for the best interests of the members, or was it?
Not at all. A lot of them were forced into IRA because the government decided, in some instances, but not all. They decided that if you didn't come in and vote against the law, that you approved it. So they counted absentees as positive votes to accept IRA. And if you go around through the Indian congresses, you'll find that some of these tribes said anybody who willingly took allotted land is no longer a member, or anyone who sold allotted land is no longer a member. And then Collier just about lost his mind on stuff like that. So you get a heavy Bureau influence on the quarter blood.
So the IRA doesn't assert the criteria, is that correct? The solicitor's opinion states the inherent rights?
Yeah, the IRA started out as a 4-part major omnibus bill. Collier went out and held congresses to explain to Indians what the bill was. Almost unanimously, they rejected it because it was so new. People in Congress turned the IRA into a Christmas tree, and they each put all of their favorite amendments on it. So you read it, and it doesn't make any sense at all. I think at Section 19, it says, in addition to existing tribal powers, the tribes under IRA would have the right to buy land, hire an attorney, and I guess sign contracts or something. I forget the 3 things. So that passes. Roosevelt signs it in June of 34. And Collier, who was a very clever politician, he got together with Nathan Margold and some others. They wrote up this massive solicitor's opinions saying we got to answer the question in addition to existing powers. What were the existing powers? So they go through all the litigation, all the statutes, and come up with these variety of rights, which they say are inherent in tribal sovereignty. Those are things the tribes never gave up. If you go back to Talton versus Mays, the 1896 Supreme Court, the Cherokees had a different number of jurors for a jury than the U.S. Constitution or Oklahoma Constitution allowed. So the question was, can the Cherokees have a different jury, different grand petit jury, I think it was. And the Supreme Court said yes, because the Cherokee Nation existed before the Constitution. So the only thing that the U.S. has is what the Cherokees gave up in the treaties. Now, this is the political counterpart of the Winans case, that if you didn't give up fishing rights in the treaty, they remained with you. So it's a very powerful case. So that's where there's another solicitor's opinion in the mid-30s that says that these governments being organized are federal corporations for the purpose of economic development, which means they're not really tribal councils. They're a creature that the Indian nation creates to do economic development. And people miss that all the time. So if something goes wrong with the tribal government, in theory, you have the right to hold a general council of the Indian nation involved, have them vote on whatever they want to do, and inhibit that federal corporation from doing things they don't want it to do.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Just to backtrack one thing, is there any general federal criteria for being an Indian that is in spite of tribal specific criteria?
Nothing.
None.
Well, if I went down my files and made a list of all the people who self-identified who became very prominent, it would be very embarrassing for Indian country. Because there's some very high-ranking, well thought-of people who are not anywhere near Indian. And this has been true from, I guess, the turn of the century. After they'd almost killed every Indian in the country, they all wanted to be like Indians. And so a lot of them started adopting all kinds of Indian stuff. You have the improved order of the red man, but they're going to be better in the Indian state. And you get one after another, the craziest frauds going on. And if a tribe's not aware that this is going on, the guy can be very successful. Write books and you go do pageants. You got it.
So how much power, sovereign power, does United Katua Band have if there's an existing relationship with the University of Colorado, a government to government relationship, for Colorado to say, Heidi McCann says she's United Katua, therefore we're not going to question it, but United Katua says I'm not.
Then I think university should give in. During the activist days, we had all kinds of suspicious people running around. And what you would do is the traditional way you would determine if a person was a member of a tribe. Ask if they knew prominent personalities there. And sometimes you would say, well, do you know John Ross? He's a Kiowa chief and all that. He'd go, yeah, we do. John Ross was a Cherokee, right? And you'd say, well, where are you from? Oh, well, I'm a Southern Cheyenne. And you say, oh, well, you name some of the villages where there's a concentration of Cheyenne. And if they said, oh, yeah, I'm from East Pork Chop, you'd say, oh, well, do you know so and so and so and so? And you could give them all kinds of names to see if they're going to misidentify. And I've been all over places in the Sioux Nation where the first thing they ask, where are your folks from? And then I say, well, from Standing Rock, there's nobody, no relatives left except Bobby Sherwood now, but because the family's been away from there for 80 years. But my great grandmother was the sister of, what the heck was his name? I even forgot. Bear something. He was the head of the Yankton A group, Bear Kennel. Mad Bear. My great grandmother was the sister of Mad Bear. So then the people know those families and they know the different bands of Sioux. And so, yeah, okay, you're really a Sioux Indian. But when you get these people who change tribes about every 5 years, you know, I've seen a guy go from Huma to Northern Cheyenne to Kiowa, and you think, cut it out.
So if federally recognized tribes have always held this inherent right to self-determine their membership, why is there need for this criteria, the enrollment, CDID?
Well, if you didn't have that, you would have little hippie communes announcing that they're an Indian tribe and trying to get federal benefits from tax exemption on their little hippie land and education rights, all of those things. And the Sandoval case, 1912, says you can't just go. Congress does not have the power to go out and just recognize some group as Indians. Congress has to demonstrate that whatever criteria Congress uses is adequate so that that community being recognized stands on a par in terms of Indianness as federally recognized tribes.
So it sounds like it is a form of protection for the tribes recognized from the encroachers' interest groups.
I went to Dayton one time for a speech. I'm greeted by all these Germanic looking people at the airport dressed in the most outlandish costumes you've ever seen. The first thing they wanted to know is if they're going to spend the afternoon skinning a deer skin, would I like to help? And I said, no, I'd like to just go have a cup of coffee and relax. Well, we're the Shawnee Warrior Society of Ohio, and we're applying for federal recognition. And I thought, where did this come from? And it's a bunch of overexcited Scandinavians and Germans that were putting this tribe together. So what do? I mean, there has to be some criteria there. When they opened up federal recognition, they had this gigantic list of groups applying to be federally recognized. And you look at it, and the Oakland Intertribal Council, or Phoenix Indian Center, or whatever, and you say, wait a minute here. You know, there's no historical relationship between the U.S. and this group of people. And most of them, if they're Indian at all, are already enrolled in some other tribe. So what are you going to do with this mess? And of course, the Bureau insisted on investigating everything. I would just gone through there with a red pencil and been done with that.
Can I ask a follow-up? Are there any instances in which it would be justifiable for the federal government to recognize a new Indian community?
Well, there have been artificial criteria in the past that when you use present scholarship and you look at the situation, then you feel the tribe deserves federal recognition. And you take the Yaquis down in Arizona, a lot of them, but not all, were refugees from the Mexican Revolution that crossed the border and were given sanctuary. So does the Act of Sanctuary admit that group to federal status? For a long time, they said, no, you have to go to Mexico. Then they got more information on the group and realized that they had gone back and forth across the border for generations, that there was no border, and they got federal recognition. Now I think there's 2 or 3 groups of Yaquis who have federal recognition. And so you ask, why were they blocked in the first place? And you come down to an overzealous BIA guy on his own authority without any justification sent a letter saying, no, they're not. The Moa Choctaws are going through that today. See, there's all kinds of proof that they've been an Indian community for a long time. They're a group that didn't want to go to Oklahoma, and they maintained a community there. You got some BIA guy saying, I'm not even going to look at your criteria. So there's justice and injustice on both sides there.
Given the current criteria today, will there be Indian tribes in the future?
It's hard to say. During the Reagan years, this guy wrote a memo saying, if we just hold everything at 1/4, Indians will marry out and that'll be the end of it. And I think people have misinterpreted that as a government policy. I think the guy was transferred soon after he wrote that memo because it got out to the tribes and they said, oh my God, what's the plan? Now the question is, if you get too much assimilation, then the local anti-whites are going to raise a big fuss over the fact that these people are indistinguishable from us. And why should they have these rights? And we're going to get a conservative Congress who's going to say, yes, you're right. And you look through the 20th century, about every 20 years, there's an effort to get rid of Indians. So it's going to be pretty hazardous. And a lot of these people, who are not running the tribes right, they're going to find they've dug a deep hole for their tribe. It's going to be hard to get out of.
Here's a long question. Actually, it's a 3-part question, so I'll go slow. Is it important for young suburban Indians to distinguish between the Indians of their tribe and all the information put out about Indians in general? That's the first part. And if this isn't part of the current criteria, why is it important to maintain ties to one tribe? That's the second question. And what are the possible dangers, if any, of this type of information being put forward?
What was the first part again?
Is it important for young suburban Indians to distinguish between the Indians of their tribe and all the information put out there about Indians in general?
Oh, yeah, certainly. You've got to preserve your tribal language. You've got to preserve customs. You've got to really look seriously at efforts starting to be made now, going back to a more traditional form of government. And so the tribes who've been very clever in protecting the main body of people, I think are going to become more popular, and people are going to go past those tribes, how they were able to do this. And I think there could be a solidification there. So I would keep in touch with local communities, kind of continue to have established relationships with them. There are a lot of Indians living in the city who drive clear up to Fort Berthold and Sisselton on the weekends, go to powwows and things, and that's a way of keeping in touch. But if you get to the point where they say, we don't know any of these people, then there's going to be a big question if you get an award or if you strike oil or whatever. Are these people really members of our tribe? We've never seen or heard of them. They have no family history they can recite. And should they get part of the per capita? So that's going to come down to an important question. And what was the second one?
You actually answered it in
Oh.
the same answer. So the third part of that question is what are the possible dangers, if any, of general type of Indian information being put forth? Patrick used to teach a class, and those specifics of Indian religions. What if he were to just lump them all together and dispense this information to non-native students and or Indian students? Absolutely.
Well, I think that's happening, and that's one of the dangers I've been really worried about. And a lot of that comes out of Pine Ridge. They've got this missionary attitude. We've got these ceremonies, we can give them to the world. And you say, no, the reason we have these ceremonies is the great mysterious gave those to us. If he wanted the Swedes or the Romanians to have them, he would have arranged for them to have them. And so it's increasingly difficult to protect Indian religion because these people are saying, okay, you've been to a peyote meeting once, you can be a headman if you want, start your own group. We got this white man over in Utah claims that he's authorized to do peyote meetings. And so at that point, the Congress is going to look at this thing and say, wait a minute, what we're doing. We tried to protect the native religion, and they went out and recruited all kinds of non-Indians. And now we've got a problem. Does a non-Indian have the same protection as the Indian does in regard to drug laws? So it gets to be a real mess there. You look up and down the Pacific coast, all of those are Sioux ceremonies that all kinds of people are doing. And they ask them, well, who said you could do this? Oh, somebody at Rosebud authorized me to. They think that attending a ceremony is equivalent to ordination in some kind of priesthood or something.
The United Katua used to have their associate membership program. Is that the same thing as what was happening at Pine Ridge, and people not having the authority to bestow a certain religious ceremony on someone and have them go practice it outside the environment of which it stems from, the associate membership? Is that the same thing? Saying you can be a member, and people going out and appropriating that?
No. When I was director of NCAI, we had memberships and associate membership. Associate membership was for sympathetic non-Indians who wanted to help. Membership was for enrolled Indians who had paid their dues and could vote, participate in the organization. What you have frequently is during election years, these tribes, a number of them, to get publicity, will adopt some politician into their tribe. Well, what does that mean? Full tribal membership or what? Standing Rock adopted Sergeant Shriver one year. Winnebagos in Wisconsin adopted George Wallace because he was a big name. They didn't know what he stood for. And so you say, well, these are just puffery.
So does adoption with the Sioux Nation have the same meaning as it did before the time of contact?
I don't think any of them have any standing whatsoever. It's just a nice honor. It doesn't cost anything, and it makes the politician feel warm toward your tribe. I'll bet there's not a congressman that ever served in South Dakota who wasn't adopted by one of those Sioux tribes up there.
Will DNA ever factor into the criterion?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but you got to watch DNA because they set a lot of that stuff up to prove what they want to prove. recently this idea 70 people crossed the Bering Strait and inhabited 2 continents. I mean, come on. It's just nonsense.
You don't have to answer this question if you don't want it. In your opinion, is Ward Churchill doing an injustice to American Indian identity?
I don't want to answer that. You'd be crazy to jump into that pool of sharks that's going on now.
How about is Heidi McCann doing an injustice to American Indian identity?
It's what?
Is Heidi McCann doing an injustice to American Indian identity?
He won't answer that.
I have one question. I'm just kind of curious.
Well, I've kept out of it because the major question when this started was, this damn essay's been around for 3.5 years. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, backed by Bill O'Reilly, who's to the right of the Neanderthals, all of a sudden it's a bigger issue than Michael Jackson, you know. And so I don't want any part of this. I don't know who the players are here.
Here's, I think, a safer question.
More people, I'm not going to say anything.
Maybe here's a question you might be able to answer. Is why do you think he might have been singled out? And it does bring up a good example of he wasn't the only one. There were people like Noam Chomsky, other writers, even somebody who I'm very familiar with in my own area of Hawaii, Professor Haunani Trask, who brought up somewhat of a similar argument, although perhaps in a different context. Was it just simply wrong time, wrong place for him, do you think? Or do you think he was singled out because of the idea of who we claim as a self-identity?
I really don't know because I was down in Arizona and I didn't know a thing about this until maybe a month after it happened. One of my wife's friends sent us a big packet of newspaper articles on this thing. So I've been a couple months behind figuring out what's going on here.
You mind if I ask one more question? I'm interested in this. Do you think universities, I'll wait for this one to ring too. Give about 5 seconds here. The joy of editing. I can edit, but I can't dub over clock sounds too well.
Oh.
Okay. Oh, we got the top of the hour. Okay.
Okay, you got 15 minutes.
Okay. Here's, unfortunately, I just have one unless I get inspired for another one. Do you think universities such as CU Boulder could do a better job of establishing relationships with local tribes when it does come to academia, education? Because obviously there have been issues raised.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And they don't. And in California, they take the gaming money from the tribes and don't do anything for them. I got a memo from somebody the other day saying, would you help us work this thing up? We're trying to track down how much tribal money has willingly been given to universities for them to start Indian programs. It's been squandered on non-Indians. We're sending kids to New Mexico and Arizona, but we don't get any graduates. What's going on here? So that issue is about to be put on the table. You know, how exploitive are universities? And you get universities who have scholars that publish the most absurd things. The Indians were responsible for the demise of the buffalo and all of this stuff. And nobody seems to say anything about it.
Do you think universities sometimes try to take the easy way out by looking more for a figurehead than dealing with actual issues?
Well, there's a thing come out, 33% of U.S. scientists admit they've been fraudulent in their research. once you know, universities are as bad as the Indian situation today. I mean, really.
Well, that's it for me. Thank you. You inspired for anything else? Chance?
I think I'm done too.
Oh, that's very informative. Well, we're actually going to save those 10 minutes then, unless somebody hits you now. Relax.
No,
Well, it's so complicated to keep the thing straight. You know, I took that. It'd take me maybe a couple of weeks to go through and document all those things, get the right year on when it happened or whatever. But I didn't realize that it started so early with the treaty in the 1820s that this quarterback thing came up. And when I tried to tell people about it, they wouldn't believe it. So I was end up Xeroxing that treaty and marking around. But traditionally, you had this phenomenon of people from one tribe being captives or adoptees in another tribe and rising to the head chieftainship.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier this winter, I was trying to sort out whether this Chief Sabona was an Ottawa or a Potawatomi. And it turned out he was a Canadian Ottawa who had come down and married into the Potawatomis. And the Potawatomis then asked him to be their negotiator at a treaty. And the treaty involved a conflict with the Ottawas, and the Ottawas regarded him as their chief. So you got one guy who is looked at Indian-wise as the chief of two tribes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the government wants to recognize him only as chief of the Potawatomi.
Mm-hmm.
You say, what's going on here?
That's interesting you mentioned Potawatomi only because I found out that I'm part Potawatomi, but my ancestry according to the family line is hard to trace to tribal enrollment period because it happened from, I guess, a nomadic group that left was the area of registry. Like I know when I checked with the Potawatomi Nation in Oklahoma, they said that at some point the enrollment would have been hard to distinguish from those who broke off at a certain time. So for me, unless it was a DNA test, I'm not even sure what that would prove. It's something that would be possible for me to enroll in or one as a member by their standards. And I wonder how many people, if they could trace, and how far they go back along all these splinter groups.
You got the Shawnees, the Potawatomis, the Ottawas, Chippewa, Miamis, Delawares, all of them over a long historical period of time start out as one group of villages. The government comes in and makes a treaty with some of the villages and not with others. Then you have two Potawatomi nations. Then time progresses, they align themselves with the Ottawas or the Delawares. And for a while you have a joint Potawatomi/Delaware tribe. And then part of the Delawares remove. And then you got two Delaware nations, and then the Potawatomis go pull back from them. And you get, and they're among the easy groups to trace. If you look at the Oneidas, about every 5 years, they break apart when you got a party signing a treaty and heading for Wisconsin. And you say, how in the world do you trace it? I've traced the Delawares back and forth and to and fro to New Jersey, to upstate New York, down to where the Miamis were, over to Pittsburgh. I mean, just. And each time, if the government signs a treaty with a small group of leaders there, that little group is recognized as an Indian tribe. And so you say, wait a minute, traditionally the Delawares had these beloved chiefs and nothing was valid without them. So you had a session in New Jersey where some people who weren't chiefs and had no authority to sign to cede land, ceded the land, and now they want to put a casino there. But where are the original Delawares, and were they consulted before the New Jersey group? You can do this with Seneca Cayuga, you can do it with Onondaga, you can do it with some of the Sioux tribes. And you end up with a manuscript like that and no clear indication of what law should be applied.
It just sounds like a very easy way for a lot of loopholes.
Oh, but it's a bonanza for historians, you know.
Say the least. Do you have anything else, Hank? All right. That is a wrap.
I do have a request though.
been through archives in my lifetime, and I could never find it. Until one day I found it, and I occupied a mission, and I discovered the treaty. In other words, before the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo could be signed, the United States had to present a paper, which was a big book, to show that since the Mexican government was defeated, that none of these articles had been violated. Now, do you know why this treaty was signed with us? Because the white tribes in Europe had a lot of trouble with the Roman Empire. There was actually in those days, if you were a tribal person, you were a slave. And they had to do something with them. So they came over here and asked for our help. Whatever it is we showed them, they defeated and conquered the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire signed a treaty the Veracruz Empire was present at the signing of that treaty. Now, because whatever we showed them to defeat the Roman Empire, what we call the Arenas Empire, or the white tribes, signed the treaty with us, making us look like we defeated them, but there was no war. So when I wrote this Indian Manifesto on March 11, 1972, of the 8 articles in there, 3 of them were the articles from this treaty. So I know where it's at. And that's the treaty that covers you. It covers everybody in North and South America. And
is it titled?
Huh?
Is it titled?
Yeah, it's called, one group of people call it the Treaty of the Camel's Eye. And the white man calls it the Eye of Isis. And a copy of this treaty sits in Central Park today. And the archives of New Mexico and Colorado also carry a copy of this treaty.
IASIS.
What's that?
IASIS?
ISIS.
ISIS.
Now, the people of New Mexico, or the Pueblos, up to 88 or 89, one of those years, were always permitted to look at this treaty that they have in the archives, that they always claimed that was in unknown language. Well, the people out there know medieval Latin and modern Latin. No secret to that. But they couldn't figure out what this language was. But I said, if you get a copy of it, or let me see it when they show it to you, I'll show you what the treaty says because I know the language that it's written in. And it's written in the Coptic language that Indians signed. So that shows you we can go back a long way in history. But anyway, it was this same treaty. Okay, you got this now. So there was a lot of wars and internal affairs in Europe going on. But finally, in February 1491 AD, the descendants of the Roman Empire purchased their titles back from the white tribes of
Europe for $17 million or 5 million golden marvettas. I can prove that. I got paid for that. All right. And the agreement was, in order for them to purchase their land titles, they would have to fulfill the conditions of this treaty. Now, the Romans no longer were in Italy. What did I just say? The Romans were no longer in Italy. So whoever the Romans were, they weren't Italian. But at the time before Rome signed the unconditional surrender, England was considered the second Rome. Right down your suit, you guys. Right down your alley. So Rome, or the second Rome, received the responsibilities of fulfilling the treaty stipulations. So who are the King and Queen of England? And Romans are the royalty of Greece. Now, I just put that here to show you, this is the treaty that you are covered by. Because of this treaty, no country can make a citizenship law that includes you because you're already a world citizen. That's why when you read I wrote a book about the 6th citizenship law of the Indian in this country, and not one of them makes a tribal Indian a citizen, and can't. Because of this treaty. So they fulfill this treaty letter perfect always. And when you go out to Mexico, they follow most of this treaty letter perfect.
Where does the language derive from?
Coptic was the original Greek language.
Greek. So the Greek language is originated from Coptic dialect.
Right. The first Christian Bible was printed in Coptic, which was printed in 451 AD and distributed throughout the world. When the descendants of Mayflower landed on these shores in 1620, the reason the Indians kept them freezing to death that first winter is because they showed the Coptic Bible and some of the objects that you needed to be spiritual. I've already lectured to the descendants of Mayflower that they didn't think I knew. That was another dumb Indian. All right, that's your treaty that covers everybody. That's the one we should be looking at. That's the one we should present to the world. And all this shit would stop. But you guys run to an attorney. And what is the jurisdiction of an attorney?
Whatever country is in.
What'd you say?
Well, it's an assumption of jurisdiction.
Huh?
It's an assumption of jurisdiction.
No, they have an exact jurisdiction.
They do?
Yes, they do.
What would their people?
Under what they call renegade law.
Okay. It's somewhat an assumption of jurisdiction then.
They have an absolute jurisdiction.
They do?
Yes, they do. Under the renegade law. And if you're not royalty, you're a renegade.
Okay.
I don't care if you're white, purple, pink, chartreuse. Now, if you're a citizen from another country, don't you usually go to your attorney? of your nation? Then how come you got an attorney from another country, a foreign country?
Dare I say? The options that we had were either we represent ourselves and get stopped at preliminary sessions in their courts, or we accept the one attorney that we found is the only one in Canada who will not accept an Indian land claim because his research indicates that we can't, there's no settlement. It's idiotic, it's self-defeating to claim something that already is ours.
Okay. The only time that you could participate or even be a subject in or out of land claims is when you're classified as a prisoner of war.
So we are.
Right. In fact, in this country, 98% of the Indians are prisoners of war. They don't even know it.
Howard Adams.
Huh?
You're familiar with Dr. Howard Adams?
It was,
He says very much the same thing.
there's 3 laws that govern Indians that nobody can deny. It's called severalty, alienation, and guardianship. You ever heard of these terms before? They are the 3 requirements that a civilized nation must abide by from the Hague Accord from 1888 through the Geneva Convention of 1949.
48.
Oh, yeah, well, they put it down at 49 every book I read. Now, the reason you're a prisoner of war is because where I come from, I'm a Dakota. Of the 2% of Indians that didn't join this autonomy type of government, they isolated themselves. They fought with the United States and defeated them. Only the United States has never signed that treaty yet. They had to make these other Indians, 98% of Dakota Indians, prisoners of war because they became the first third world nation. And if they were to relieve that prisoner of war concept, jurisdiction over them, the territory of Wyoming, Montana, Utah, Nebraska, South Dakota, parts of Minnesota, and Iowa would become a third world nation. Interesting? Now, I took the chief from Wounded Knee to New York City in 1973. And I'll tell you an event that happened that makes me wonder if Indians really do need help. That is, I am a legal advisor, where I deal only in international law. I do not deal in domestic law. That's what your attorney is.
No. He's dealing with international.
You have to be an international legal advisor to do it, and you have to be registered with the United Nations to do it.
Well, he's going on the premise that Bulgaria being, free of USSR, they're now a charter member of the UN.
Because if he was a legal advisor he would take your issue on commerce directly to the United Nations and not to a court. Because that court is domestic law to the renegade. I'm sorry. That's it.
You classify it as domestic.
You're a domestic subject of the area. Now, what makes you a subject of the area? It's something your people did in the past that made you that way.
Subject of what area?
Whatever area you're in. Like this one here, we have the Seneca Nation of Indians, right? Owned by Governor Cuomo. It's a political subdivision of the state of New York. But these Indians believe it's an Indian nation, an Indian government.
Nor am I that naive, but the laws that we abide by, and two areas where we live, where we are, we're beyond the treaty frontier, meaning there are no treaties, no nation that we know of who are closely related to us ever surrendered the Rocky Mountains where we live. It was spoken.
That's right, and that's because the Dakota defeated the United States in that area. That's why when my grandmother, who was born in Canada, in exile, the United States could not sneak into Canada and sneak them back like they did in Ontario on my great-great-uncle that permitted the United States to go in there, capture him, put some opium in him to dope up, to bring him back, to try him without any evidence, and was hung under the orders of President Lincoln. I know what you're talking about.
Okay, for us, using English, we would refer to our way of government as using customary law.
Customary law. That's what they call customary law. But you got to remember one thing. The court case, January 17, 1975, called United States versus Consolidated Wounded Knee Cases. Go on. The judge made a statement that 65 Sioux Indians couldn't figure out, and he says, we cannot bring the caucus omasis into a law or a treaty. In other words, he's saying clan mothers are the law. They're above the law. And if you study international law, of the 6 laws that are treaties that make up all international law, 3 of them are Indian. So the foundation of all law that white man has to follow, 3 of them are tribal custom and usage.
So we're correct.
So if your tribal law has clan mothers and clan membership and heads of their chief, they can't touch you.
This is what we have to reestablish. We're in the process.
That's right.
We're in the process. Hopefully with a little help from our friends. Some of the 6 nations are married in with our people, the Hill. We have recently accepted Wampum Prominent. So we have treaty with them.
But you just sent it to the governments where you look like. What state are you in?
We're in the province of Alberta.
Why did you send it to the premier of Alberta?
Premier. Yeah.
You send him a copy of the Wampum Belt. Then they should send one in the area they're at. Right? That puts your tie. That makes a legal tie. They can't shoot that down.
Well, this is where, first of all, our strategy is to use international law, existing international law, and that we are putting the onus on them to prove they have jurisdiction in our territory.
No, you can only invite.
Well, that's another term.
That's right. You can only invite because always remember one thing. In international law, we are not bound by a white man's boundary line. We are bound by a linguistic concept. Okay, you understand? We're not bound by a boundary line. We're bound by a linguistic concept because the Peruvian Indians speak my dialect. So that's how far my jurisdiction runs. Huh? Oh, a little cream, a little sugar. Did you add? Okay, go ahead. Does that help you?
Let's say premature for me to assume that we have a report from several linguists, two from Columbia University, one from Washington, D.C., one from Canada, right, from the East, right, McMaster, right, who, along with one of our members of our lodge, the Rocky Mountain Cree people, have
You're Cree? You're Cree?
Yeah, they're Nihil. We call ourselves
I went to school with Cree. You know where Washington English School is, North Dakota?
I do.
That's where I went to school with them. I remember those Crees used to come down to my reservation. That used to be the older days. Remember, we'd steal men from other reservations or women to keep our bloodline strong.
Yeah, we're
pretty good looking Crees in it, boy. Let me tell you something, boy.
I'm a mixed blood. My grandfather was Cree and Asinepo. The white man's Cinnamon, just the Asinepo. We call them. They were our allies.
Yeah, we have one we call a Washicho now. We have a Washicho, then we say, right? Then we have the Washicho na, which becomes an ally. See, the original white man that came here, way before Columbus ever came here, that was always here, was a Washicho na.
We know of them. In our history, we know of them.
Right. I've even found the history.
Yeah, we know of them through our the keepers of our history.
Like my grandmother used to tell me that the people came up to Mississippi. And they had helmets, they had buffalo horns on them because of an agreement that we had with the Norseman people. So they came up and they used to teach the treaty to our people way back when. That's how she knew all these treaty articles.
Okay, they called on one of our teachers. It was called Sagachak. It was like our teacher. It was a contract, very wonderful, powerful. And they called on him to defeat. They were being attacked. This white nation was being attacked by a huge nation of cannibals.
Cannibal?
Well,
You're talking my language now. I can identify the cannibal for you. Because do you ever notice why the white man has fish on Friday? Now, remember that law I told you? What is the name of that doctrine? Payne's Doctrine. That's an agreement that the white men had to sign down and say that they would no longer ever kill an Indian, cut him up, make steaks out of him, have the Jewish rabbi bless it, and sell it at the meat market. Now, you know why the Payne Doctrine came about? See, scalping came from Europe. And so they used to scalping Indians out here was big business. Even among the millionaires are prejudiced against one another because of two groups. The one that's called the old money are the families that made all their money off human steaks, scalps, and all that sort of thing. That's called old money. The new money, they do not associate with the old money. So even among them, they have their own prejudice. But anyways, scalping got so good The white man thought he really had it, right? So he come out to where I was. And only we learned how to do it really good. I mean, we were good. We were so good that the civilized nations had to sit down with the Dakota Empire to say, we now have to determine that is a crime against humanity by scalping. And we had to agree that we would no longer ever scalp the white man again. And that comes from the Payne's Doctrine. Never mind what these colleges say, oh, scalping comes from bullshit. We were just good at it. We took the one thing that the white man scared, and that is to go around clean shaven on the head. And I like to remind him of that. Okay, so cannibalism. So cannibalism was part of the white race. Now, there's a difference between the white tribes and the white race. Like, it's the same identity when we say Washichana, we know that's a member of the white tribe. And then the Washicho is the white race. The cannibals are the white race. Yeah, it's the same. You ever hear of St. Paul, Minnesota? That was the capital of our empire. It used to be called Ototo. And white people, tribal people that got driven from their countries over in Europe, they came there and they lived with us. I can take you a lot of towns in Minnesota. When you come into town as a Sioux man, you're treated like a king. You know why? Because they were given territory, you understand, to live in and not to be molested. That the Dakota people gave to them. There's a lot of that back where I come from. So it's not always the same. All white men are prejudiced. It's not so. So, no fish on Friday is the fact because of Payne's Doctrine. And you got to remember when you ate steak, Indian steak, that was called the long pig. And from everybody that I've ever read on it said the long pig tasted a great deal like the short pig or swine. So the church doctrine of not eating any meat on Friday, it was put in there to make sure that the people through generations would stop eating human steak or stop practicing cannibalism. So you're talking about the people that were attacked that were cannibals, that's what they were.
So cannibalism was going on before Columbus.
Well, yeah, Columbus, it took 10 years to kill all the Indians in the Caribbean.
Because they say that's when cannibalism first.
No, that's where it's at. That's all. It took 10 years to kill every Indian in the Caribbean. Did you know there are no Indians in the Caribbean? It took 10 years because it was used as a food supply going back and forth across the Atlantic. And that's recorded documentation on this man. It took 10 years to wipe out every Indian in the Caribbean. And there are no Indians in the Caribbean. Well, where we're at, anyways. Where was our original subject?
Okay, the point you made, I'm interested in, where the lawyer chose his renegade.
No. There would only be one way he could be a renegade. Well, he's a renegade for renegade people, and that is the average person on the street or in a community. It's an old French term. Now, I wrote a book in 1972 that the allegiance of attorneys and where it has to lie. It sold out in 1 month because everybody wanted to Jesus. Here was an Indian who wrote a book and actually showing where jurisdiction and how jurisdiction worked. But every licensed attorney, the reason I was able to save this reservation right after Woodard, and I threw all the attorneys out. I built grandmothers, headmen, and chiefs, took their names off the registration of the Seneca Nation Indian, sent it to the Bureau of Indian Affairs in Washington, D.C., showing that they were signatory Indians and not prisoner of war Indians. So the act of Congress had passed to terminate them didn't apply to them. Of course, the government's real smart. They got around that now. So the 25 years up against the government can now use it again. Because the Congressional Act had passed. Nobody has repealed it just because the Indians defeated it. That didn't repeal it. A law is a law until it's removed. I don't care how old it is. Funny thing about law, it never grows whiskers. It's as fresh and as great as the day that it was passed. You've got to learn to understand. So I'm not down to your attorney, you understand? But I'm an international legal advisor. I'm registered with the United Nations. You understand? I deal in international law, so I know what works and what doesn't because I've tried it here in this country for 20 years. And it worked. The only thing I feel sorry about is the Indians didn't pass it on. See, like, you're telling me things that I learned about over 20 years ago. So in other words, the reason you're being practiced on is because right now there's a certain date that comes up that the white man's got to get rid of all Indians. Did you know that there's only 35 square miles in the United States that is legal United States territory? $18 square miles in the state of Minnesota and 17 square miles in the state of Washington. All the rest of it does not belong to the United States. It assumes jurisdiction because the Indian doesn't know who he is. So they have to watch over this poor imbecile.
So, in essence, what you're saying is that, let's take, for example, the Privy Council of Great Britain. They, in fact, are the Romans, right? Recently, a group of Indian people, in particular, the Western Shoshone, Nevada, Utah, California, and Idaho, the Tamagamis, Chippewas of Ontario, the Lillooets, Shuswap, Okanagan of BC, Planks Creek, and of Saskatchewan, and the Inuit of Quebec attended at I believe that's referred to as a non-native court, but representing the crown, and they pressured the crown into honoring existing treaties, being that these treaties made had to go outside the country, Canada and the United States. An example of one of the matters that was brought up in 1773, where the so-called Mohican Indians and Connecticut went head-to-head. The Mohicans took it to the Privy Council of Great Britain and literally defeated and won jurisdiction. The jurisdiction referred to is territory and all laws, customary law pertaining to their cultural ways. Do you consider that to be a valid?
I do. I very do. You know why? Because when it was one jurisdiction, then it told me who were representing the people, what they were like, and the claims and the rights that they had according to international law. Now that's what you got to look at. I don't look at it like you do, where you say, well, a bunch of people just went there. No, there had to be a certain type of Indian with certain duties, tribal duties, that had the power to do this. Now, in 1975, I had a problem that dealt with cession jurisdiction, and cession is territorial right. Since, 1890, or somewhere way back in the 1800s, these people signed a treaty or an agreement with the United States to create 5 congressional villages here. Now, if there were congressional villages, that tells you that the state of New York was not in the United States, is it? All right, so I came along and said, the Indians that signed an agreement with the United States were not signatory Indians. Therefore, Caucasus Mesas had no jurisdiction. In other words, I'm saying that the white clan mother, and all across this country, there's areas where the white clan mother has jurisdiction, cession title, territorial title. So I had to find out where she was, because I had to tell her that she didn't have jurisdiction over Salamanca, New York. So I wrote to Ogden Land Company. No, Holland Land Company first. And they told me that they were a division, a parent company of Ogden Land Company. So I wrote to Ogden Land Company. They said, we're a division, the parent company of the state of New York. So I wrote to the governor of New York. The governor of New York replied and said, we're a division of a parent company called Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I wrote the governor to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They wrote back and said, well, we're a division with a parent company of the Bank of England. So I wrote to the Bank of England, understand? And they in turn sent me a letter back giving me the name of a white clan mother who was married to a senator at the time. So I wrote her a letter and told her, because of this incident here, she didn't have cession title over Salamanca, New York. So I know it works. In other words, let me put it this way. Hey, I've had 25, 30 years of this. I found out, see, at the very beginning, I was just like everybody else. I was stupid. I mean, the FBI would catch me, beat the shit out of me, throw me down cliffs, you name it. Jab metal through my body. See? So I know that you can say the wrong thing and it'll kill you. So that thing, when you say that, I knew there were clan mothers, separated by clans with membership, representing a headman to speak on behalf of it. Then I knew that England had to honor it. If you did the same thing right now in your place, the Queen of England would have to honor it. The United States would have to honor it. France would have to honor it. It's not, the law hasn't changed, Elaine. The law don't change. The only thing that changed is people don't understand who they are.
Using the law of nations today, if Bulgaria should enter into trade and commerce with us, is there prepared?
Wait, are we talking about the country Bulgaria?
Country Bulgaria.
Good. Oh, this is great.
It's
You know why I like Bulgaria? Because I used to always say that, geez, if Russia took us over, we'd be better off than we are now. You know why? Because the communists were a lot better to their aboriginals over there in the United States than it was.
You know, Bulgaria, since the USSR is non-existent, or a charter member of the UN, they're now prepared And they do have even a building for international trade tribunals.
That's great.
They want to trade with us. They have no economy right now. They're establishing new, fresh economy. They want to trade directly with us. And the lawyer who I spoke of is living in Bulgaria. He worked beyond the treaty frontier, British Columbia. There are no treaties, and with us, there's no treaty. We found that even though the judges, the Supreme Court judges of the provinces that we serve notice to by jurisdiction, agreed with him in his findings and his research. But he said, either you honor the rule of law or you're a criminal.
That's right.
And we can say
that's right. He's absolutely correct. And I will tell you one thing now. If you set up your clan mothers, your clan membership, your headsman, and your chief, you would protect that man from Bulgaria. You understand? Now, let's put down your law here. I will tell you this. But if you arrange your system under the common law of the white man, you understand? You are not Indian.
So that's something we've accepted some time ago.
All right, you got that? I would like to speak to this man from Bulgaria.
We spoke to him last night.
Huh?
We spoke to him last night.
Because if he's from the country of Bulgaria, now first of all, you got to remember one thing. In 1973, when I took the chief to the United Nations, I had the approval. There's 7 nations that rule the world, right? The only one that didn't approve of me before the General Council was the United States. But I had all 6 others. So I was going to bring up this issue of why we should be kept in a prisoner of war state. And not at least a third world nation, because look how many nations, there are 144 nations now. They're third world nations, right? But you want to know what happened? This is what I'll tell you that you got to watch out for. So in order to speak before the General Council, I have to carry credentials, don't I? So I was up at the International Law Department receiving my credentials. And while I'm up there, guess what happens? Somebody rushes my chief through the civil rights, civil rights, which use up their one time to present their issue. I'm still up there and I haven't come down yet. So I'm trying to warn you that whatever you do, some of your own people are going to sell you out. You've got to be very careful about it. Haven't I told you that? And what do they say? The one thing they can't beat you at? Religion. Now, what's the 3 religions that the United States Army thought of and gave to the Indians? Come on, what are they? Yeah, and?
Mowoka.
Huh?
Mowoka.
Yep.
Postmates.
And Black Elk.
Black Elk.
That's right. Guess who thought up these religions? The United States Army. Part of congressional records. So guess what religion I come from? I come from the old one. The old one that Congress said is hostile to all other Indians.
So is ours.
No, I know that. I know the original religion that we're supposed to have. Okay, let me give you an example. I like to do this. The Mohawks really chop them up. There's a court case called People for the State of New York versus Boots. You ever hear of it? 1981. And this judge says, you can't go to church on Sunday and be an Indian on Monday. And he's absolutely right. Because if you study the Christian Bible, there's actually laws that tell you when you're supposed to hold the Sabbath. It's not every 7 days. Holding church on Sunday isn't even Christian. So that judge knows more about the Christian religion than the Christians do. And actually, I find him a friend. Because the oldest known Christian Bible in existence is an Indian Bible. Did you know that? That sits in the British Museum. And it is 2,000 years older than the Septuagint. That the rest of the Bible was translated from the Septuagint. So, here we are. How many Christians do we have in the United States? They're not even honoring their own Christian faith by holding the Sabbath on the correct day. They're actually giving honor and their spiritual strength to the goddess of Isis. So they're pagans. I remember when I was a kid going to school, they called me a pagan, a devil worshiper, and everything like that. Here today, I can prove that they're the pagan, the devil worshiper. Takes a long time to get even, but you know, I love it. But I used to get beaten up for believing in the Creator and the Great Spirit. You get back out there. You're not welcome here.
So present day Christians,
right?
are in fact,
Or what?
pagan. Are in fact, pagan.
They're pagan because they hold their rituals on Sunday, which belongs to the old Isis and Horus religion of sacrifice. So the judge was right, wasn't he? He was actually trying to straighten these Indians out.
Well, it can't be Indians if they follow the Christian religion.
Huh?
It can't be Indians if they follow the Christian religion.
Or pagan.
Pagan religion.
So you're actually, when you're doing that and going to church every Sunday, you're a pagan. That was a pretty smart judge. It wasn't no stupid one.
Under Christianity, what is the proper day?
Huh? Okay, I can give you. If we had time to learn, I would teach you that. It's in the Bible. It tells you exactly when to hold it. But we must start the first time the Sabbath was held, which was at high noon on a particular day. Then it shows you how to count the days by days and hours, and the next time you're supposed to hold it. You're supposed to have 3 different churches. These 3 different churches are perpetual, that you hold them in each one in a given time. And it's perpetual. It isn't the same building. Because Indians wouldn't do anything on it. What Indian would do something in the same building always? Don't we travel? In summertime, don't we have our summer home, our winter home, our spring home? That's where we would hold our churches, the same method, wouldn't we? Isn't that just common knowledge?
We still do it.
Yeah, some places we still do it too here. But, you know, this is the thing, so the judge knew more about Christianity than what's the name of this one? There's evangelist on TV all the time.
Graham?
Graham, yeah. He knew more about Christian religion than Billy Graham knew. But then, you know, this is, you know, what we're looking at. But there is a time, and there's a way to determine, like, you know what I'm working on right now? He gave me a computer, and I wanted to do it. See, the Indians, through legend, tell us what the world was like before the Ice Age. There were different days in the year. There were different ideas. There were different lifestyle. Everything was different than the one today. So we're coming up to the zone where we're going to go back. Earth's going to flip over again, and we're going to go back to this other world. And I'm saying we've kept all the things we were supposed to keep spiritually through this long journey. Right? Because I've been looking up the white man stuff, and he even knows that time continuum reverses itself. Can you understand when I say time continuum? It reverses itself. Immortality reverses itself. So where's heaven? And where is heaven going to be after the next ice age? Man, if they're expecting to go to heaven, where is heaven going to be then? I mean, boy, are they in trouble. So I'm doing it right now is because I found that there's a lot of sciences that the Indian has that the white man will not permit its people to know. I got some people coming there. They're making a move and they want to now see, well, Jesus, we better look at this thing here because we're coming to the end time. A lot of white people know it's the end time, pretty close. They know, and then I keep saying, Indians are supposed to lead them? Boy, see some of the Indians that I know, boy, they would lead. Man, you talk about a pitfall. And these people are looking for the Indians to pull them out of it. Man, we are in trouble. Because we're not even teaching the things that we're supposed to know that pass on to them if they want to survive with us. You go back on that foyer. These girl dogs have made him horny, pissing all over the house.
I have to go back a little. You mentioned that Robocop. We're familiar with that.
Huh?
You mentioned Robocop. One of the falsified human beliefs. We were familiar with that. Handsome Lake came to life when I met with.
I'm trying to show them the day the U.S. Army turned it over to the New York State Education Department to print it.
Now, Black Elk.
Right.
How did that become a religion?
Because the United States Army used him as a protocol observer. It's right in the book. It tells you he's a protocol observer for the United States for the slaughter of Wounded Knee. And all Wounded Knee was over religion. He was a very young man, but he was a protocol observer. You got that? Upon the slaughter of Wounded Knee, he would be made the new high priest by the United States government. So all these years growing up as a little boy, everything like that, I suffered the isolationism of not belonging to one of these three religions.
You're so unfortunate.
Huh?
You're so unfortunate.
Yeah, I'm so unfortunate. I'm still unfortunate. Geez, I'm dealing with guys with handsome legs. Oh boy, I think that's the absolute God there is. You know what I mean? I said, I got to remember this General Terry because he was a pretty good man because he's the one that forced it on me. General Terry, he's not exactly a fool, you know.
How does the white society keep track of their clan mothers? Where are they
Well,
designated or delegated?
okay, let me tell you something. And I'll listen. I have belonged to a lot of white clubs that used to talk about the elite that rule the world. And I said, hell, I see their footprints on the reservation every day of the year. I said, because they go by a certain law on the reservation. Hey, come on, you guys see it on your reservation. You know these little things going against your people and everything. It's a little special click. It moves this one, moves that one, this one here to keep you down. That's what I call the footprints of that elite. The clan brothers, whatever you want to call them. I said, I find their footprints on every reservation in the country. Naturally, it would be natural because the one place that's challenging their authority. And we used to all talk about it, discuss it, because they are an elite people. I downloaded one only through mail, but then the guy that I wanted to get it back from so I could find out, see if I could follow her in the course of 6 months, I would find out where they go, right? Because they do go someplace. Now, somewhere's in my writings, I do a lot of writing. I know what the inside of their temple looks like. I know the plates, the silverware, the dishes, the food, I even know their wedding songs. Now, this is special now, the white grandmother. I know it, I have it down on a manuscript road, but I could never find anything that showed me what the outside looked like. The chairs, arrangements, everything. The songs, the chants, how everybody sits. It took a lot of years to study, but I mean, I put it on the book. I got it somewhere. I leave stuff all over the country. But I know all that. It's just that I had never been able to find what the outside of one looks like, which would give me an idea where they could exist in this country. And I know the jurisdiction of the white men is such that one has to be placed ever so often, so many square miles, to keep that mind control over the people up. So,
Can you get a list of them?
Huh?
Can you get a list of them from the Bank of England?
Are you kidding? I can only give one territorial right, and the reason I got that is because clan mothers signed the document. Got that? The clan mothers that did it no longer are sovereignty. They already went the other side and got jobs from the nation.
So that's the elitism we witness today in our territories. The elitism that we witness today in our territories is actually elitism that related directly to.
Okay, let me give you another one. I have met some international attorneys in my day. And being that they're white and everything like that, they have the jurisdiction to move about someplace, right? So I said, give me a copy of the Te Deum filed with the International Court in Hague of February 18th, 1493 to tell me which country is responsible for meeting these treaty stipulations. And the only comment I got from one guy is that you're asking for me to look at something that will be a death penalty. So it's a lot of the stuff that you would think, it's not out on the open. If it was on the open, we would have been defeated the problem a long time ago. It's in existence. We merely have to find where it's at.
So, in a tribunal, an international tribunal, should it transpire, is it wrong for us to insist that, in fact, the so-called governments in North America, being that of the United States and Canada, come under our jurisdiction?
Mm-hmm. You have a very good question that Canada has to ask you, that has to answer you. And that is, before it become a subject to England, it had to have taken a vote to show that it did not favor becoming a state of the United States. That's one of the conditions that Canada exists under. Now, I have never found a piece of evidence that shows that Canada made such a vote. And that has to be before they can even become a subject or under the jurisdiction of England.
I think some of the provinces did, didn't they?
Big what?
Some of the provinces, didn't they vote not to become states?
No, they only voted on this new French government.
Newfoundland or those ones up that way?
Yeah. They only voted not to become a French government. Isn't that so?
Yeah, I believe
It took about 2-3 years ago, wasn't it, that happened?
Just last year.
Last year? Well, you know, what I'm talking about, that they wanted the country to be French speaking and.
No, I'm thinking of the time when they formed the colonies. When they formed the colonies, I think there were a couple provinces that they asked to join them, and they refused.
But
the 13 colonies, yeah.
In the colonies here or over there?
Over here.
Didn't want to become part of the United States?
Right.
That's
Yeah, but
the people referred to as Acadians.
okay.
That would be the
One thing I do know, you got to remember, the Civil War of the United States wiped that out. You got to remember, up to the Civil War, people in the United States were still members of a penal colony. You know that. And it was a Seneca, his name was Eli Parker, that they made him a general, right? So he wrote the Articles of the Treaty for the South to sign. And the South was the legal government. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been the second law of the land. It would still have been the first law of the land, which is the Queen's Law. See, you're under the first law. You're not under the second law.
okay. The status of Canada changed in '48. Up until that point, they were subjects to the crown of England. Everyone in Canada. So, and becoming citizens of Canada, at that point, our people should have challenged.
Right.
They did.
Well, you still have the right to challenge it, because that one question must be answered. Of course, then it's ticklish too. I'm trying to tell these kids here, talking here, I created the first Confederacy citizens in this area since 1794. Got that? The first Confederacy citizen. On September 19th, 1973. The 350 Indians that signed up with clans and families and everything became the first Iroquois Confederacy citizens in 1794.
In this area.
Huh?
In this area. So to do that back home?
Huh?
To do that back to Six Nations, you just gotta put the 5 nations together? One representative of this nation?
Who created the 5 nations? Come on. People for the state of New York versus Booth, 1981. Who created the 5 nations?
George Washington.
Yeah. So what is it? And what was it to do? It was to wipe out the jurisdiction of the Iroquois Confederacy. Remember, you said you wanted to do this right.
Mm-hmm.
I know it hurts.
So what they call the Six Nations Iroquois Confederacy is not.
It's only the 6 nations because George Washington created that too. He created the 7 nations. Then he signed all three treaties with all 3 of them.
But the only valid for us is the only valid body is the Iroquois Confederacy.
That's right.
Which we have the right to recreate it.
That's right.
Because nobody else can take that right away from us.
That's right. The reason I know this is because I was the Iroquois Confederacy legal advisor for 10 years. And I had to know these things if I was going to teach these guys how to go the right way.
What's your understanding of the nature of a confederacy?
Well,
in abstractly or versus a nation?
I'm talking about the original Iroquois Confederacy was 52 nations strong.
There's 52 states.
So when the Cherokees created an autonomy government, signed a treaty with the United States, that automatically took them out of the protection of the Iroquois Confederacy. When the Choctaws did the same, it took them out. When the Crees did the same, the Creeks did it, that took them out. When the Seminoles did the same thing, that took them out of the protection. That's how vast the Iroquois Confederacy was. That's a lot of power. Now, the reason that New York State has so much power is because George Washington created a territorial dispute that couldn't be challenged. That is the same as the Mohawk land in Canada is the same as the United States. There is no separation. The same with the Cayugis, the whole thing. And that wiped out the boundary line between Canada and the United States, which was created by the Iroquois Confederacy. And it was only for the white people. Those that believed in a monarch, they got on that side. Those that didn't believe in a monarch, they stayed on this side. Even in a treaty of Mahattawa or Manhattan, Central Park, the separation between royalty on the east and the peasants on the west. When they tried to create the Mason-Dixon line, you understand? The Iroquois Confederacy stopped it. Because here's the white men. Now what they did here, let's make one down here. You know,
so that's why you said the last time I was here that when we stand with the Confederacy, the legal Confederacy, guys, you brought up again. We write the letter to Ottawa, we write the letter to Great Britain. Europe, as they know, the Iroquois Confederacy.
And you write to the United States here. Because it's both of them, right?
Mm-hmm. So the whole continent will start shaking. You know? Right.
You see, when I tried to get the Six Nations, what is Nedro? What is Nedro? Onondaga. What are they? Six Nations? Yeah, Six Nations, right. When I tried to teach them things and show them how to come under the protection, they wouldn't have anything to do with it.
Okay, Mayor, the Confederacy, as it is up in Six Nations right now, where the chiefs are supposed to be meeting, that's not legal. Since when?
Since 1794. That's a long time, isn't it?
What happened in 1794? The Canandaigua?
Indians created new nations under George Washington.
So went from the Confederacy being 52 nations, you wanted it down to
just down to 5 or 6, 7, whatever.
That was the Treaty of Canandaigua.
Might have been. I don't know. That's a damn treaties. I just read the 5 Nations and the 6 Nations, and I said that George Washington was one smart dude. You know, he was no fool.
That's why you called him the Great White One. Some people did.
And yet did you know he was a freak, a fruit? He liked little boys.
Tell by the way he dressed.
Well, that's the way they dressed. The Indian was the first one to give men pockets. Otherwise, they had their little purse on there. No. Did you know that? We gave them pockets, pants. You know? Man, can you imagine running out with silk stockings and that big shoe with a buckle on it?
So the government, the so-called government of Canada, the so-called government of the United States, they know since 1794.
Sure they do.
Legally, there has been no Confederacy, but they also know that the people, like the signatory savages that are there, which are the kids, We can create that.
That's right.
Just like that.
It can be done.
Has to be.
I've seen it done. Here it is. That's why I'm retired, because I already know it works. But then you know how long I had to train these people to step forward and teach them about sovereignty? It took me 6 months out of a garage, 3-4 nights a week, to teach Indians what sovereignty. Indians use the word sovereignty so, what do you call it? Like it's a common word, but not one of them understand what it means. None of them know what it really means legally. And it takes a lot. Now I hear them spouting it out, but that's my teaching, 20-some years ago. But they still can't. Like one guy was going to come up and beat me up one day, and I said, hey, I says, when you can go out there and shoot at that state trooper, he has to run. Think you got enough guts and nerve to fight with me? Because that's what I've already done in my life. And what have you done?
Being on the state, can you find sovereignty?
Huh?
Can you find sovereignty for you?
Well, sovereignty, if you understand it, identifies a nation. And if there is a nation, then it has citizens of this nation. Now, tribal citizenship is a lot different than citizenship of the person or the white man. There's a big difference. In fact, if you look at the law, there's no way in hell an Indian could be a citizen of a white nation. But then if we go back to that treaty that I told you about, no white nation would dare write a treaty to make an Indian a citizen. And I find that governments are very, but that's the first thing you got to understand. Sovereignty is a nation with its territorial boundary that has citizenship or citizens. And what makes a citizen of a tribal nation? Clan mothers were the territorial holders of the right, and they have membership. And they select a chief to speak for them, because for them to speak would be too low a thing to do. They let the peasant do it, which is the chief.
You did that reverse, right?
That's what we call the chiefs in our language. They serve the people.
That's right. You serve the people. Yet this area here, the first time, or the one time, I don't know, was it 1940, 47, maybe 50, where the clan mothers clubbed to death the chief in front of the white people. And they had to show just where the authority lay.
Well, it's window.
I got a candidate. But, that's the thing. You got to know what is a sovereignty. As it is now, a bunch of Indians together, they consider that a sovereignty. That's a community, right? It's an ethnic community. And Nancy's got a whole bunch of ethnic communities. They got black, yellow, pink, purple, brown, whatever else there is. All it is ethnic community, but it still belongs to the United States. Over 90% of the Indians in this country will consider themselves a citizen of the state they live in and the United States. Now, there's a Supreme Court case that says that where you give your allegiance, we either keep or forfeit your sovereignty. It's called Elk versus Wilkins. The white man really likes to use that on Indians. Elk versus Wilkins. ELK versus Wilkins. WILKINS. KINS.
And this what? What does it do?
Huh?
It challenge you.
The white man all has to ask you, say, where do you live? You say, in the United States. That wipes out your sovereignty right there.
So you have to, like, when you go across and you just say Six Nations, you're supposed to say North American, and they shut up.
When I crossed the border, they asked me where I'm born. I'm from the Dakota Empire. Oh, I see. They said, what race are you? And I said, I'm an American Indian. And I kind of remind them, I'm not a Native American.
Okay, what should we be stating? We're going to start from the Confederacy. When we cross the so-called border, what we should be.
I wouldn't say anything until you do that documentation. You have to do the documentation first.
So we got to set the plans up. We got to have a plan membership.
You got to do all this. But let me tell you something. 25 years taught me not to do it. You know why? Because all the ones in your reserve that don't do it will become your enemy. And the white man will take his finger and stick it right up that Indian's ass to make him do it. That's why I don't recommend it. And I said, in your particular case, I said, it's nothing to create and get you sovereign. But you're only going to last 6 months. Then they're going to overwhelm you through the religion. And that is Wovoka, Black Elk, and Handsome Lake. They're going to overwhelm. So that's why I said, before I start anything, I should teach you what the original religion is. Remember my wisdom call? I said, this is your original religion. That you won't know it, won't understand it, because it's been substituted. Just like when we've got this place and saved it from termination, the government over there hired all the people from the longhouse, right? That wiped that one right out, didn't it? They used religion. And yet they were the ones that fought us. You understand? But the white man said, we'll use the longhouse because that's supposed to be the place of authority. What are you, a sweat lodge? You're like the Sioux. You must belong to the Sioux.
Well, that's who gave us, we bought those, way back. We bought those lodges from the Sioux. That's what I said.
Man, you know when I was a boy, we would sit in the lodge, in the sweat lodge. These big ones, the whole community, the men and women in there, no clothes on. You know, if somebody got hard when they knew they weren't supposed to be there, right? But we were taught spiritually. Now you got sweat lodges for women and sweat lodges for men. That's the same thing that white Christian does. You know, where the heck is your spiritual power? You know, you can't even overcome a little thought in your mind, man. You're pretty weak. You can't overcome it.
Little thought in your mind, little thought in your head.
No, but that's it. Imagine how low that has come already, right? Since I was a kid.
This is very, I can bear witness to that being, to the Amazon basin in Brazil, 1986, where even though I speak my language, I go by our old ways, our early spiritual beliefs. I got down to my shorts. Those people were without clothing, unashamed.
Right.
The only difference was if your penis hung down, you're indecent. But if you tied it up with a string, you're indecent. I felt like a white man among the nations.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's true too, right?
Psychological.
Because you got to watch out for those women because they like to see the long penises. You know what I mean? You got to compensate for it. I mean, there's no logic for that. But no, this is the thing. Like, so when, well, I get lonely sometimes to see. If I could see that again. When I was a kid, we went in the lodge and we prayed, we meditated, we played. You know, and then where I come from, everybody tried to steal all the children because it was a blessing to be able to fascinate and keep all the children, right? It ain't that way anymore. I even worked with one girl I got here. I don't know what to do with her, you know. But then she's got training that I can't break, that the white man put in there. I can't break it. That white man training is something else. Can't break it. You know, they get 10:30, they're burning tobacco tonight, and I said, "You're getting pissed off. We'll burn it at 2 o'clock in the morning." I have to pay a law somewhere, you know. Somebody's got to be in control, right? Not them. They're not old enough to be in control. Oh, I got you a writ for you. You know, sometimes law is so simple that we sometimes take law and expand it out to where it really isn't. I want you to read it. You look at the computer thing, monitor, it's on the left-hand side. And sometimes, you know, law is simple. But we like to make it complicated. Did you know that when you read the court case, the freedman versus slavery, it tells you that the Indians were the ones that owned these big plantations in the South. Boy, no white man. Go and read it out loud. I wanted to show you how simple law is.
Defendant's memorandum of law. The defendant will look for remedies for redress of his convictions or charges as found on. It has been recommended that the defendant file a motion for Indian sovereignty. The defendant is a member of a autonomous Indian government, which disqualifies him from doing so. Nor does he have a legal type representative to do so. It has been recommended that the defendant file a motion of entrapment, which the defendant understands to mean to catch as in a trap, to trick and endanger or difficulty, deceive, and snare. The defendant, dealing with an Iranian nationalist, one who only has to look at over 10 years of experience with Iranian deals with Indians in the United States. He is known by Indians. Iranians have a grant of immunity from prosecution on any crimes they commit. Iranians, according to court history,
I got the court case.
C 4-81-0498 ALPR cannot be sued by an Indian for any injuries, loss of property, or even death in a court of law. Or even death in a court of law.
That's right. You can't get at him. You have no recourse.
Had the defendant not met the demands of this Iranian nationalist, this court and its officers could not have protected the defendant from injuries or even death, which the defendant knew at the time in dealing with his Iranian nationalist. The defendant knew that if he did not make the purchase of cigarettes and a weapon, he faced possible death and one bullet. The one who committed the crime would never be found. Or Ali.
Ali? I got the name there. I forgot your name in here. Or Ali or Bonnie.
Bonnie are names of John Doe, Indian Iranian culture.
What is it? Their names are what? Are John Doe. So you can't trace them to their property in Iran. That's an agreement they made.
In the Iranian culture, and the defendant has no protection from death due to the fact that protection granted Iranian nationals.
But is that what you needed or not?
When did they receive this immunity from prosecution?
I only know since '81. I don't know, but I think it started when the United States started dealing with weapons to free the prisoners in Iran. Yeah. All I know is that court case I found out. You got to remember, there's one in Oklahoma and there's one in Texas. You got every one of these cases, the United States Justice Department shipped the Iranian out of the country because the Indians were now down to where they were going to shoot them because the Indians knew they had immunity, right? There was nothing you could do, so the only way to do it is blow them away. That's why when he was in your court of law, guess how many Royal Mouseys were standing around him? That's on there. And when I talked to some Indians, they weren't caring about it. They didn't give a shit about his name. Because they know they changed that just like changed the days of the week. They wanted to know what he looked like. They wanted a picture of him. And I said, I can't provide this, which I can't. And that's what you're dealing with.
Was that even in Canada? They have that immunity from prosecution?
That's right.
So I mean, every case of this, where cities, we follow the 4 different jurisdictions: Cornwall, Ottawa, Hamilton, Brantford.
With this guy?
So it means all those cases would be a collection case.
Right. But that's how you play law.
With law.
Huh?
With law, with law.
Right. And nobody's supposed to be brought into a court of law without a remedy, are they? And you have no remedy with an Iranian nationalist. He's got full plug all the way.
That's why they stated in court that he wasn't an RCMP, he was an agent.
That's right. Now you take that, you put his name in. You see where it puts your name in? Yeah, that's right stuff. Now you got to file that with your court you're in. You have to give one to the prosecutor. You have to give one to the court where you file everything. And of course, you give one to your attorney. Your attorney's going to fight you like hell. Because, you know why? Because this immunity is issued by a court order to the judge. Where all officers of the court must obey this court order. And your attorney is an officer of the court.
This information itself is the same as what Bruce is saying. The appeal process and then your sovereignty. Notice, serve notice to the court. They don't have jurisdiction.
See, this is going to fight. We're going to find the jurisdictional dispute over.
Right. Right, but see, the thing is right now, if they got jurisdiction, they got to give you equal protection of the law and due process. And which, with that, you don't have it. Wasn't that simple? Wasn't that simple?
States here, the duty of protection upon the court exists only so as to prevent the federal and provincial governments and their citizens from entering your territory and in consequence breaching your sovereignty.
That's true. But they reached it.
They did already.
Right. So what you got to do is correct the mistake of the past. Always remember when I got to make Indians understand this. So a piece of paper is there, right? In order to put this piece of paper to sleep, you got to put another piece of paper on it to put it to sleep. Anything else?
The jurisdiction that creates that kind of non-remedy for a person itself is invalidated by doing that. Why not?
Because these nations are using it. Called the Clean Street Act.
What is it?
Called the Clean Street Act.
Clean Street.
That means that the court is supposed to do everything under its power to clean the street and get rid of the undesirables by whatever means.
That's an act under what jurisdiction?
Well, let me put it this way. I was sent to prison for 20 years without any witness. Got that? But then I turned around and found out they are protected by a certain set of laws. I don't know them in Canada. I only know them in the United States.
Well, we know that the existing judicial system in Canada has the false powers that be. They're not nothing more than life.
Right. See, let me tell you something about the white man, and you can count on this. Whatever law he goes by, he follows it to the letter. He doesn't dare violate, otherwise his whole legal system around the world would collapse. Now, I've gone for years trying to make the white man collapse it. But I've had federal judges in the middle of a case run out of the courtroom, understand, and be gone and never come back again. By not, so that he wouldn't be responsible for causing the collapse of his corporate juris to come to him.
This
Patty, you say, Peter?
See, this particular lawyer is working beyond the treaty frontier for us in the past as affidavits through Supreme Court judges from British Columbia, Canada. After he served them a notice of a jurisdiction, gave them his research, met with them months later, both of them said, it's true, Mr. Clark, that in fact, the rule of law were applied. The Indian people have jurisdiction over us.
That's right.
But Mr. Clark, we would lose our jobs. That's right. They're more concerned about their position. And of course, the system might collapse. In fact, the rule of law were applied.
So we don't have the rule of law. Always have to. No, they don't. One rule of law overrides another rule. Remember I told you, I have been in situations and circumstances where, I mean, you know, you name it. The 57 Magnum, you name it. The M60, you name it. They bred, right? But I had the particular legal incident where custom and usage overruled the United States Constitution.
Custom and usage.
That's right. And they had to back up. I had big tanks in front of me. You know that big gun that they sit there, you know, you wouldn't even find me. But I found soldiers in the field over the law. Right. You know, one thing Indians got to work on is that white man knows his law. When we were kids, knows everything he does. But tell me your Bulgarian friend this. Two Supreme Justices could say this for the simple reason that they had you in a legal predicament that they can say that. Have you ever been in an incident where you could arrest a judge?
As much as subpoena the judge, but
I arrested a judge. I arrested a judge on this case. Have you ever heard of the Tacoma, Washington? What they call the 57, Tacoma 57? There were 57 Indians that were fishing salmon in the Pasquale, what is it, the river in Tacoma?
Yellow.
Huh?
Yellow.
Okay. And they arrested them, charged them with all kinds of crimes. These guys were going to be gone 15, 20 years.
I remember that was Hank Adams.
That's right. So they called me up to do it, you know, and so I said, well, shit. You know what I mean? These guys got autonomy governments. They give allegiance to these state governments that they call Indian governments. Shit, I'm whipped. And I remember I seen some of the films on it. It looked like a war zone. Have you ever seen some of those films? Jesus. So the only thing I looked at, I did a title search on the city of Tacoma. Of course, I got a clue from the judge's daughter because I was shacking up with her. So I went and did a title search on the city of Tacoma, and I found that the deed for Tacoma was not a legal document. It had not been signed over by any group of Indians. It had never been terminated by an act of Congress. So I went to the court and I told them that, and I showed them the documentation. And I said, I arrest you for terrorizing, oppressing Indians. And he came right up to the court.
He stepped down off the bench.
Yeah. You know, the white man knows his law. Don't kid yourself. He knows it backwards and forwards, in and out. Don't ever underestimate him.
Did you prosecute him after the arrest?
Huh?
Did you prosecute him after the arrest?
No, they were got there at 3. Just went out the door. Make a fish from this river right in front of Tacoma. They were my younger days. Those kind of crazy.
Well, that was where I think I asked you where that Bob Satykam came out of too, out of that.
What?
That name of Bob Satykam, after that Tacoma, Washington fight on fish, he got into tobacco and women.
Yeah.
And then he got charged with murder and fled to Canada and he died in Canada.
Yeah.
It was
That's sure.
That's Bob Satykam.
Right.
But he was one of those guys, 57, as far as I know.
They were tough guys.
We used to go down to their camp once in a while.
You know, imagine the guy, of course, I used to wear a cane and walking down. Here's these tough Indians, man, you can hold your gun like, should I shoot him or look at him, you know? I've been around it most of my life, you know. Get used to that for a while. But, you know, to them, as far as beating the white man in his own laws, they just couldn't believe it could be done. As far as they're concerned, they're ready to die right there at that.
Murder for the Spider was his book. The defendant filed a motion for his sovereignty, but the defendant is a member of the Army and government.
Huh? That's what it is. Yeah, that's where you're a member.
Prisoner of war.
That's right. That's why you can't. It'd be foolish to file sovereignty because only as, you know what? You cannot file a sovereignty claim of a nation you're not a member of. It's a very violent crime that would put you in prison for life. Remember that. There's the other part of it. You've got to know what you're doing. There's consequences to it if you don't do it right. Remember I told you at the beginning?
That's right.
Right.
Right. The circumstance you're in now is you have no remedy. No action.
That's right.
That's what he's saying. By having that, you're trying to verify that these people have immunity. It's called torture, isn't it?
Well, I like the white man's law. If I were ever to use tribal custom and use to take back a territory, I would like to use the white man's law, what they call the law of the primitive. And that's where I get to screw all over them. I'm sorry, it's law. That's law.
The United were saying, when do we get to this raise and pillage?
But it is the law. They used it on us.
Or what?
Huh? The law of the primitive. The white man is a primitive. And the fact that person means imitator. So if he's an imitator, he's a phony, isn't he? A primitive.
What are they saying today?
These are bears are monkey. They are. I believe they are.
But that's what person means. I wrote a book on what a person is. You guys saw it.
How can I get a copy of it?
Huh?
How can I get a copy of the book?
Well, I don't know, I can't give away copies like, I give away one, maybe even a couple more like that, but I can't do it because I violate my own copyright law.
Maybe you should think about reprinting it.
Yeah, true. I'm thinking about reprinting it. But shit, man, that takes
An
money.
idea. Reprint it and then have it for
What?
sale. Reprint it and have it for sale.
Well, I know it would sell a lot because, thinking it was 10,000 copies and it's sold out in 30 days. I thought it was pretty good.
Right there, that's it.
Huh?
Yeah. What's the book called again?
My relations have 800 million. I knew what you said.
The book, what is the title of it?
It's called Dakota Proclamation.
The Murder of the Queen Center.
Yeah. And I remember what I
So,
said. Yeah, I sent one of them, it took me a long time to send it. But I couldn't even get a good Xerox sheet to do it right.
Do you own the copyright?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I own it all right.
how much money do you need to read?
What?
How much money would you need again to be
Well, I would see, I would have to find a publisher that could give me a good deal. That will cost me a little over $2 a copy to have made. I sold it for $5, so I made a couple bucks out of it. I don't know what the price is today, but it was done with what they call offset printing. That's where you got all we do. This was done by, when you take a picture of the page and it goes on an aluminum sheet and that's how it's done. That's why it was done so cheap. Because there's a lot of information, there's a lot of word typing, you know, their image is what they call it in there. Well, but see, if you read it, it gives you a pretty good idea of all the things that you have to watch out for. All the way coming. It gives you all the very interesting. One book tells you that a licensed attorney must protect the interests of the United States when he represents an Indian. Next one. That's right. So it must be the same in Canada also, like that. Very much. That's why it's got a Bulgarian attorney, because I would like to know, according to the Canadian file of the National Court law, what is the responsibility of all these white nations that are supposed to take care of the Indians? And I can tell you what they're supposed to do because I know the conditions of the article.
That was found in 1493, 1493, a year after discovery, right?
Right. That's when the Vatican surrendered their power as a world or a nation, turned it over to the international court in the Hague. Because in the olden days, the Vatican was the international court for all the tribes of the world. Well, see, I'm working on the end time. What do we have to do in the end time?
But the Coptic Bible was the one that was in Constantinople, Greek Orthodox Church. Yeah. And then the Romans usurped it, took it over and became the Roman Empire.
Well, the Roman Empire lost their power 408 AD. And they were, you got to remember, the tribes of the world ruled the world for 700 years. You'll find that in the history book too.
From that time till
until they bought it back. They bought it back in 1491.
So from the 498 for $17 million. That's when the Queen of England, the King of England became.
They became the descendants of the old Roman Empire. The old Roman Empire were Greek royalty. If you look up these descendants of England, you'll find that they're Greek royalty. They're not, what do you call it, Saxon or Norman or anything like that. Well, anything else?
I just wanted to throw this at you, get some feedback from you.
Okay, first of all, you got to remember one thing. Do you have any things of those things that I've heard in my lifetime? I can imagine. Okay.
Okay. The rule of law depends for its implementation upon the existence of an objective bench and bar to do the implementing. But since 1849-50, the bench and bar has been the very institution in the previously established jurisdiction. Since usurpation has been and continues to be criminal in the specific sense of fraudulent, treasonable, accomplices in genocide, the precondition element to the rational operation of the rule of law and objective implementation institution has been absent.
Right.
How do you resolve within the existing court system, for example, the situation by trying to apply the rule of law?
The rule of law,
Should he not? Should he skip that and just deal with?
he has to deal with that because first of all, he's got a charge.
Yeah.
He has to eliminate the charge before he can do anything.
Wait, this is Bruce said.
Okay, see, it's got to work that way because there is no other way. When you have a charge on you, you've got to get rid of it. Once you get rid of it, then you go after it.
That's it. You've got the document you need. And Bruce steps in, then it's jurisdiction.
Right. See, then you open when you do jurisdiction, then you know why they have this Armenian has jurisdiction, doesn't it? See, this Armenian was given jurisdiction over the Indian that even the white people don't have over there.
Is that Armenian or Iranian?
Well, Armenian, whatever.
Is that because we never had any dealings with anyone but the Christian people?
No, because he's a member of a third world nation which has no clan mothers. The people in Canada have white clan mothers, and they would be violating tribal custom music.
So in Canada, you have.
All right. Okay.
Got it? A third world nation is a nation that has no legitimate title holders.
So that's why Canada and the United States are always sending X number of dollars to the third world nation.
That's right.
Iran isn't considered a third world nation.
Yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is. The women over there are a piece of shit. They don't even dare put on panties over there. They gotta have it ready at all times.
Okay. Okay. Prior to the deposing of the Shah, right? What status did they have?
Well, you remember when the United States was protecting this one group here? Why? It's because there were still tribal people. So what did they have?
Customary.
Clan mothers. They're the true landlord. And by this treaty, the United States is forced as a civilized nation to do whatever is humanly possible to protect tribal custom and usage.
Third world countries don't have clan mothers.
That's what I was trying to get at. Why did they send all that money to them? So that eventually they're going to take over that area.
You mean
Like United States? No, if there's a third world country, you always say, well, Canada, America, they're sending millions of dollars over there. It's not to help them.
Oh, no. You ever hear what they call institutionalizing people?
Yeah.
Well, Indians are the most institutionalized people I ever met in my life. You hand them a piece of bread, boy, they're going to be back tomorrow for another piece.
Smiling.
What we call institutionalizing, instead of these third world nations, is because they now put a debt on a nation, don't they? And they usually give it to some jerk there that's going to come with that, won't even use it for the people, which is the doctrine of a democracy. You see, it's not a world of righteousness.
That's what I'm trying to get at. When they send that money there, they're not helping that country. They're trying to put them in debt to that nation.
That's right. The world of law. Shit, if it was world of righteousness, I'd put on one of those funny hats and I'd turn around collar and go down the line. But it ain't that kind of a world.
So in order for us to assert jurisdiction, we've got to reestablish.
You got to make yourself sovereign. And what is the white man recognize as sovereignty?
The criteria is a land base, be in possession of.
No, you can use occupation, and not own the right.
Yeah, that's what we're claiming. It's we're not talking ownership. but we're occupying that territory now as have time and no.
Right.
You want to say citizens? Landholders?
But you're talking about an aboriginal right,
Yeah.
which is superseded to the doctrine of discovery. You've got to take away the doctrine of discovery away from it.
That's right, so.
So that's
We've got to, well, like you said, one over the other. In order to assert your sovereignty, you've got to do away with the doctrine of discovery. That's what they're relying on now.
That's right.
So
They're assuming.
they're assuming that they have jurisdiction.
Well, they're assuming see, all the jurisdiction of the United States is an assumption.
Yeah.
Because Indians don't know.
It's like,
So they have to take an assumption, but they put the assumption with the conditions of guardianship, alienation, and severality. Now,
So I wanted to show you the document we put out in response to our charges. We're also on charges, myself and my wife.
see, there's only two people that have ever beat the Clean Street Act in the United States.
You start saying the Clean Street Act, I never. As far as I got was that, and you switched to something else.
The Clean Street Act, okay, first of all, let me tell you the history of the Clean Street Act. The United States, because of high cost of living, had to find another source of income. So they followed the old one of England. I don't know if you remember the old England one, the East-West organization, which grew dope and sold it to the nations. Well, the United States did the same thing too. They hired a guy called Timothy Leary, who was a scientist, to produce a new type of grass and cocaine. But the grass and cocaine had to be different than the other ones because it had to be something in it that they could control the populace. So he did it. He developed the grass and cocaine that the United States grows every day of the year in Colombia. So the Colombian cartel is only the dope that these guys are able to steal from these farms of the United States. Got that? The Clean Street Act is to put these guys that's stealing United States dope into prison. That's all it is.
The real peddlers.
That's all it is.
The government doesn't want competition.
That's right. So who in the hell in this country receiving prime dope number one legally? You have that answer and you'll have them get rich tomorrow.
Oh, those are officials.
Shit, I watched it. Goddamn, I watched a goddamn gasoline truck come on the reservation, right?
See,
and I can even tell where the dope is below on the bottom of it. Because it's dope and sweat's different than gasoline.
So that means that's why the cigarettes have to be cut out because the government don't like competition.
That's right.
Right. They only want to do the legal ones that they do it.
Right. Like Silver Creek School here. They was raising out with my kids, and I said, okay. I said, according to the Congressional Act on Indian Education, so much dope is to be distributed to the Indians attending the school. I said, but the Indians never receive it. And I says, who in the community receives it? And they never said another word to me again. Never had no problems anymore.
Is that your Congressional Act saying that you're supposed to get?
See, I quote a lot of the men because the white man understands that. You understand? He understands that you know the law. It's not an Indian world out there. Don't kid yourself. Your problem is white, not Indian. Isn't it?
So they use Indians to do it because there's a certain problem with jurisdiction there. See, no Indian can have any charge or criminal act against them unless an Indian gives it away to have it done. They cannot do it just because they feel like it. They got to do it because an Indian gave them the right. Got to look for your own people now.
Whether those Indians have a mandate or not.
I'm sorry, man. They got it from somewhere. They just didn't find it on the street corner, believe me. Indians sat down there and told, shit, they probably had an old scrawny. I'm waiting. Indians go for women around here. I don't know. I don't understand it. Shit, where I come from, man, they got good looking, sweet Norwegians. I mean, when you climb on that, boy, you're climbing on something. Not these goddamn refrigerators you have out here. But that's the way it's done. Done behind closed doors.
That's a Stan Cohen did up in Upper Sassafras. That lawyer for the people in Upper Sassafras and up in the PC. When he first got up there, he brought his secretary with him. And she started taking the boys out for a ride for 2 weeks. Then he stopped bringing her. But once he got his
Then they really got hungry, right? Then they're ready to sign anything.
Can I read you this, what we ordered the government to adhere to? Now this,
You never tell a white man what to do. I mean, you never suggest what the white man should do. You command him what he is to do.
okay. We are Ashewichi Nehilak, which is Rocky Mountain Creek. We are also Chippewa, or white man says Ojibwe. Came there in 1800s.
You know where you originally came from?
Yeah.
Where?
East.
Huh?
Here, in the east.
That's right. New Jersey. You were the people that first signed away no alcohol on the reservation. Boy, did they use that good on us, huh?
What we did was serve notice in this statement. It explains why. This is our elders' court, which 4 different nations are a part of. We hereby serve notice to you and all your other branches that your assumption of jurisdiction no longer applies within our territorial boundaries. We have informed your government through our declaration of sovereignty enclosed herein of our intentions and our concerns for the future of our national homeland. Self-determination for indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere has been recognized and affirmed by the United Nations Commission on Human Rights in regard to our position on treaty rights and jurisdiction, as well as Indian sovereignty beyond